The time is now 6 p.m. Our regular city council meeting for October 15, 2024 is now in session. First on the agenda is Mayor Pro Tem Westbrook will lead us with the opening prayer and a pledge of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Please rise.
Let us take a moment to pause and reflect. As we gather here today, we ask for wisdom, clarity, and understanding in the decisions that will shape our community. May we be guided by a spirit of fairness and compassion, always mindful of the diverse needs and voices of those we serve. Help us to approach our discussions with respect for one another and a shared commitment to the common good. May we work together to create a city that fosters safety, opportunity, and unity for all. Grant us the strength to lead with integrity, the patience to listen, and the courage to act in the best interests of all of our neighbors. Thank you for this opportunity to serve. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, we have a few proclamations. Our first proclamation is DVAM Awareness Month, October 2024. And our council member Hayward will be reading that proclamation. If I could please have the representatives join us up here.
Good afternoon, or evening, I should say. Reading Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2024. Whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy and dignity, security, and humanity due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, physiological, and economic control, and our abuse including abuse to children and the elderly. Whereas the problem of domestic violence are not confined to any group or groups of people, but cut across all economic, racial, and societal barriers and are supported by societal indifferences. And whereas the impact of domestic violence is wide-ranging, directly affecting individuals and society as a whole. Here in this community, Thriving Heart Crisis Center, formerly Guadalupe Valley Family Violence Shelter, answered 1,025 crisis calls and provided 8,431 services to survivors from September 2023 to 2024. Whereas women are not only targets, men, young children, and the elderly are all victims. And sadly, emotional scars are often permanent, and domestic violence costs the United States companies at least $3.5 billion in lost work time, increased healthcare costs, higher turnover, and lower productivity. And where it is battered women themselves who have been the forefront of the efforts to bring peace and equality to homes. Now, therefore, on behalf of the Mayor, Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor of City of Schertz, do hereby claim the month of October 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. That's awful. Anyone like this? Say something.
Hi, everyone. My name is Manajay Harika, and I am the Executive Director at Thriving Hearts Crisis Center. We've been serving Guadalupe County for over 41 years now, and unfortunately, the need for our services continues to grow. With that, along comes our expansion and a lot of new faces. So be on the lookout for us. We are also having our annual fundraiser this Thursday, so there's still time to get tickets for that. Boots and Butterflies, in honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and also to support our efforts throughout the year. So thank you.
Our next proclamation is Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Month, October 2024. Ms. Martha, Mr. Lane, if you can please join me up here. And Councilmember Watson will be reading the proclamation.
Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness, October 2024. Whereas on June 14, 2023, Governor Abbott signed 4 new laws into the state fighting against the deadly opiate, and whereas during the month of October, cities across the state observe Texas Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Month to recognize the commitment the state has to combat the deadly fentanyl epidemic. Whereas many of the listed drugs afflicting communities across America today, fentanyl is the single deadliest drug crisis our state, nation, and every encountered. Whereas fentanyl is now the leading killer of Americans. Between the ages of 18 and 45, fentanyl-related deaths in Texas increased over 500% from 2019 to 2022, taking the lives of more than 4,800 unsuspected Texans in just 3 years, and leaving untold numbers to cope with the sudden loss. And whereas it is important that every Texan is aware of the fentanyl crisis plaguing our state, Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Month will be life-saving efforts to protect our family, friends, members, and loved ones from this killer. Now, therefore, it is resolved that Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor of City of Schertz, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 24th as Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Month.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good evening, Mayor Gutierrez, council members, guests, and fellow Schertz residents. My name is Lane Johnson, and I'm honored to be alongside my wife, Martha, Angel Grandma, along with an angel mom that has been right by our side through all of this, and all our friends and family. Today we gather to mark a significant moment in the city's history, Schertz's first ever Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Month. This proclamation is a testament to our commitment in confronting the devastating crisis that has affected countless lives across the state. As we come together this evening, we cannot ignore the harsh reality that fentanyl poisoning has taken far too many precious lives along with beloved children. Jake Ryan Paez, our grandson, who came to live with us after his mom passed 7 years ago, Donica Caprosi, Cody Drago, Kyle Hinkle, Brandon Williams, and Jacob Mandaka, and many more. These are just a few of our Angel Mom children. We honor the resilience of the families who have been faced with this unimaginable pain and loss of their loved ones, and we recognize the strength that it takes to share their stories of hope, preventing others from enduring the same heartache. Fentanyl is an unforgiving drug. It is potent and deadly substance that is mixed in with all other drugs, thus making it a silent and lethal threat. We vow to educate our parents and students through our schools and throughout our communities with a variety of outreaches about the dangers of fentanyl, the signs of poisoning, and the resources available to for prevention, treatment, and restoration. Our goal is to turn the tide of this crisis and provide hope and healing to all of those in need. We must remember that every life lost is a profound tragedy, but it also serves as a powerful reminder of the urgency of the mission. On Sunday, we gathered at Brook City Green Line along with others from our great state in honor to in the memory of those we've lost, and support who continue to battle, and to share our unwavering commitment in saving lives in our second annual Souls Walking for Souls Fentanyl Awareness Walk. Governor Abbott, Senator State Senator Donna Campbell, State Rep John Lujan, Judge Peter Sakaya, and multiple law enforcement officers were present, agencies were present. We had food trucks, live music, and a candlelight visual. We know that together we can make a difference, raise awareness, promote advocacy, and build a Texas where the devastating impact of fentanyl is a thing of the past. We greatly appreciate you joining us at in this critical endeavor, allowing us to carry this message of hope and awareness throughout the month ahead and beyond. We are so incredibly grateful and deeply thank you all. Appreciate it.
Our next proclamation is National Manufacturing Month, October 2024. And presenting the proclamation. Oh, it's not here, that's why. It is Councilmember Macaluso, and if I can please have the representatives up here for that. Mike's yours.
All right, National Manufacturing Month, October 4th, 2024. Whereas the City of Schertz acknowledges the vital role the manufacturing sector plays in our community, providing high-paying jobs, contributing to economic growth, and enhancing the quality of life for our residents. And whereas manufacturing companies in Schertz are a cornerstone of our local economy, contributing significantly to the prosperity and stability of our region. And whereas Manufacturing Month is an opportunity to celebrate the achievements of our local manufacturers, highlight the importance of a strong and thriving manufacturing sector, and showcase the exciting and rewarding careers available in manufacturing. And whereas the Schertz Economic Development Corporation is committed to supporting and promoting the growth of manufacturing businesses within our community, ensuring that Schertz remains an attractive destination for investment, innovation, and talent. And whereas the City of Schertz, in collaboration with the Schertz EDC, is dedicated to fostering an environment that encourages the growth and sustainability of the manufacturing industry through workforce development, infrastructure investment, and business-friendly policies. And whereas Manufacturing Month offers an opportunity for residents, businesses, educational institutions to learn more about the manufacturing industry and explore the many career and economic opportunities it presents. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor of the City of Schertz, hereby proclaims the month of October as Manufacturing Month in the City of Schertz and urges all citizens to acknowledge and support our local manufacturers and the Schertz Economic Development Corporation's effort to strengthen and grow our manufacturing sector.
Thank you, Councilman Macaluso and Mayor. I appreciate you guys. My name is Scott Wayman. I'm the EDC director for the city. You know, Schertz is fortunate to have very large manufacturers like Cisco and Caterpillar and small ones like NAI Signs and Major Wire. The importance of those manufacturers is their money that when they sell products outside the region, it returns to the city, and that helps us kind of build our economy. So manufacturing is very important, and we sincerely appreciate this resolution. Thank you.
Our next proclamation is the Hill Country Night Sky Month, October 2024. And the proclamation will be read by Mayor Pro Tem Westbrook. If I can please have the representatives join me up here.
Whereas the aesthetic beauty and wonder of star-filled skies are the heritage of all humankind and locally to the inhabitants of Schertz and therefore worthy of celebration. And whereas the experience of standing beneath a star-filled night sky inspires feelings of wonder and awe, may encourage interest in science and nature, especially among young people. And whereas the opportunity to view star-filled skies attracts tourists to our region and therefore economic benefit to Schertz. And whereas preserving the rich heritage, historic heritage, and starry night skies of Schertz is important to its residents. And whereas light pollution, which is wasted light that performs no function or task, and artificial light that goes where it is not supposed to go, is created by glare, light trespass, sky glow, and overlighting. And whereas light pollution wastes natural resources amounting to at least $2 billion per year and contributes to diminish American energy independence. And whereas the historical view of the night skies has been eroding in many nearby areas and generations are growing up with limited, if any, view of the wonders of the universe. And whereas the influx of people into the Texas Hill Country region and the accompanying light pollution from area lighting fixtures has been steadily on the rise, and whereas solving the problem of light pollution involves making better use of outdoor lighting to direct light down to where it is needed, instead of upward into the sky, putting outdoor lights on timers and using outdoor lighting only where necessary. And whereas Hill Country communities are increasingly dedicated to the preservation of the region's night skies, as evidenced by the frequent educational activities conducted in our region and by increasing number of places in our region. Order number 367, order amending order number 199 for regulation of outdoor lighting in the unincorporated areas of Comal County, Texas, within 3 miles of the Camp Bullis boundary, Guadalupe River State Park Star Parties in partnership with San Antonio Astronomical Association, New Braunfels Astronomy Club Star Parties, Comal County Friends of the Night Sky, Bracken Cave Preserve, and the Comal County Dark Sky Resolution number 2018-26. And whereas the regional effort and preservation and celebration of our night skies is worthy of a month-long celebration, now therefore Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor of the City of Schertz, does hereby proclaim the month of October 2024 as Hill Country Night Sky Month.
Comal County Friends of the Night Sky and the Hill Country Alliance, thank you for celebrating October Night Sky Month with us. If you would like to learn how to make your home and or business night sky friendly, please visit our website at www.comaldarksky.org and the Hill Country Alliance's website. Thank you.
Our final proclamation is the National Community Planning Month, October 2024. Councilmember Brown will read the proclamation. If I can please have the representatives join me up here.
Good evening. City of Schertz Proclamation, Community Planning Month, October 2024. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. And whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories. And whereas American Planning Association endorses National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight how planning is essential to recovery and how planners can lead communities to equitable, resilient, and long-lasting recovery. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Schertz. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the Planning Division of the City of Schertz and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now therefore, be it resolved that Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor, hereby proclaims the month of October 24 as Community Planning Month.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Emily Delgado. I'm the planning manager here with the Planning Division for the city. Thank you all very much for the proclamation. In addition to the proclamation, we've also accomplished some significant tasks this year, including the adoption of the comprehensive land use plan, some significant UDC amendments, and another item is we just recently received the American Planning Association Planning Excellence Award for the 11th year in a row, which is a pretty big deal for us. So just thank you to the division and thank you to council for the recognition.
All right, next on the agenda, the employee introductions. If I can have Public Works.
Evening, Mayor, Council. We have with us Justin. He's in our Water Wastewater Division, new to us. He's born in San Antonio, moved to Schertz in 1998. He attended the school system here, Rose Garden, Schultz Elementary, Wilder, Corbett, Clemens. Graduated in 2009. Purchased a home in Converse in 2017. Welcomed his first son in May of 2021. Likes working on vehicles, hunting, fishing, spending time with his family, and challenging himself with new tasks and learning new skills. Justin.
Welcome to our team. Mike's here. The mic's yours if you'd like to say a few words. No, all right.
All righty. Also, we have Ementel, or Monty, as he likes to be called. He's born in a small town in Louisiana called Moreauville. Moved to a beach town in Florida, Navarre, I guess. Attended high school there. Played a little football with Western Kentucky University. He has a younger sister, and he's also brand new to Texas and has welcomed a new baby girl and also has a 5-year-old son. Also likes to spend time outdoors, hiking and fishing, and most importantly is a family man, so we like spending time with them.
Mike's yours. Would you like to say a few words?
I guess so. I'm really not a man of many words, but I really do appreciate every opportunity that I do get, coming from a small town in Moreauville, Louisiana. Straight country mud boy, coming to a different city and trying to understand different aspects of what's going on. I just appreciate everything. I appreciate Mr. Jeremy and Mr. Matt for giving me a chance to show what we can do. Me and Justin, we was in the same introductory class. We went through all the classes together, so we really just appreciate it, man.
Well, gentlemen, welcome to our team. Appreciate it. Next, we have Public Affairs.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I am pleased to introduce to you guys tonight our new Marketing and Communications Specialist, Tatum Hearn. Tatum is a recent graduate of Texas State University, and she actually joined our team last week, so she's very new. She comes to us from the city of Bernie, where she was an intern for the last 4 months in their communications department. She's originally from Beaumont, Texas, but due to her dad's career in law enforcement, they sort of moved around a bit before she landed in North Austin. In her spare time, she enjoys watching movies, TV, and above all else, enjoys spending time with her family and their 7-year-old Labradoodle, Ty. And we are really excited to have Tatum join our team and have her share her talents with us. So this is Tatum.
Hello.
Hi, Tatum.
I'm just really looking forward to this opportunity to grow within this community. This is my first career job post-grad, so I'm just looking forward to see where I will be in the near future. So thank you guys so much.
Well, welcome to our team. I was wondering who the new paparazzi was up there in the middle of the road, but
Yep, she's jumped right in.
yeah, she stepped right in. Yeah, welcome. Next, we have the Schertz Local Government Corporation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome our new Assistant General Manager for SSLGC, Mr. Philip D. Francesco. He was born in Austin but raised in Brazos County, right around the Bryan College Station area. He attended Bryan High School. He's a graduate of A&M with a Bachelor of Science in Bioenvironmental Science. And then he also has his master's in public administration from Texas A&M in Corpus Christi. He's spent, since 2005, he's been in public service for the state of Texas and for various municipalities. He's been with us now for just a couple of months. He's been married since 2009, and they're excited to be hosting an exchange student from Switzerland at this point in time. Prior to 2021, he lived in Corpus Christi, Bryan, and in Fort Worth also. He enjoys motorcycles and cars, camping and computer technician work, and he's also a member of the Rotary Club of New Braunfels. So with that, Mr. DeFrancesco.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for an introduction. Council and fellow staff, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for welcoming me as a member of Team Schertz, and I'm looking forward to providing good service for the community and for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to our team. Next, we have the presentation, recognition of the 2024 Emerging Leaders Class.
I'm going to say a little something first. Good evening, Mayor, Council. They're super excited to come down and help me honor the class 2024 class of emerging leaders. So if you'll recall, in 2022, the city developed, in concert with strategic resources, government resources, the city developed the Emerging Leaders Program as a comprehensive effort to provide advanced training to budding leaders in all departments across the city and at all levels so that they could reach their leadership potential and add even more value to the quality of service that the city provides to its customers. So the program consists of an eight-month curriculum of training, developing, and honing the leadership skills of City of Schertz employees. Training includes and incorporates concepts related to leadership, human behavior, trust, effective communication, conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, team dynamics, mentoring, and coaching. Participants in the program have a mentor to assist them through the program and provide counsel at regular intervals. Employees who complete the program will be equipped with a stronger skill set, readying themselves for career growth and opportunities that may arise. In fact, we're really proud to say that we've already have have had more than 5 employees who have promoted either while during their tenure in the program or since completing the program. So that's really awesome to see that growth that's come through the program. So we're here tonight to recognize the accomplishment of the 2024 class of emerging leaders. And so super excited to have the mayor and Mr. Williams, if y'all come on over. And so when I call your name, participants, if you will please come up to be recognized. And I should have done this and didn't, so better late than never. Here is the class of 2024. Oh, nope, just kidding. There you go. Thank you. Here is the class of 2024. And so our first participant to be recognized tonight is Amy Anderson from EMS, who's a go stand with them. I'm not going to be in these pictures. There you go. Get a picture with them. Good place to put it. There we go. If I can have you come stand over here, your compadres are going to come join you. Next up is going to be Thomas Brooks, our master electrician in internal services. Come on over and join Amy. Next up is Nick Ferris, Public Works Assistant Director. Jackie Marbach with the Police Department. Come on down, Jackie. Albert Orozco from the Civic Center. Over. Next we have Sydney Paredes from Parks. Cody Rains from Planning and Community Development. Was not aware. Sorry about that. Well, unfortunately, Cody couldn't be with us tonight. So we'll honor him later. Sarah Rodriguez, also Planning and Community Development. Catherine Shield from Parks. Friends over here. And last but not least, Yolanda Valdez from Human Resources. If y'all want want to get together for a quick picture, y'all would? Yeah.
Come up.
Quick, I do want to just mention and give a special thanks to all of the program mentors without whom it would not be possible. They give their time to meet with these emerging leaders and to provide mentorship and friendship and relationship and just building networks. And so thank you so much to everybody who acts as a mentor. Obviously, Sarah couldn't be here tonight, so I'm here on her behalf, but also Z Reed is an integral part to making sure that this program runs smoothly, helping us coordinate the classes and lunches and all that good stuff. So definitely want to take a minute to recognize them as well. So thank you so much, and great job.
Thank you, Jessica. You just met our city staff, our leaders for tomorrow. Thank you all so much. And we have great things coming, and you'll be part of them. Thank you. All right, next we have the Public Works Department will recognize the TML for ROAD Ready Program.
Good evening. I am here just to introduce Randy Garza, who's with TML. He's here tonight to present a certificate of achievement to our Public Works Department for a program that they have recently completed. So with that, I'm going to invite Randy to come up and make the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Gutierrez, members of the City Council, City Management, and esteemed guests. My name is Randy Garza, and I am a Safety and Loss Control Supervisor at TML Risk Pool. I am honored to stand before you today to celebrate an important achievement for your Public Works Department, the Road Ready recognition awarded by the TML Risk Pool. This acknowledgement reflects your commitment to maintaining the highest safety standards in one of your biggest exposure areas. A special acknowledgement goes to your city management team and key personnel that worked hard to receive this achievement: Larry Bush, Nicholas Ferris, Desiree Johnson, and Nancy Tumlinson. Their dedication and support for this program, as well as their commitment to our partnership at the Risk Pool, have been vital in achieving this recognition. Thank you to all of you for your hard work and leadership. Together, we are building a safer and more resilient community for everyone. I would now like to take a moment to read the letter and present the plaque that highlights your achievements and the recognition y'all have received. To whom it may concern, we are thrilled to extend our heartfelt congratulations to the City of Schertz for successfully completing all 5 digital badges of the Road Ready program. This noteworthy achievement is a testament to the collaborative efforts and dedication of your team. Working on or near roadways creates the potential for catastrophic encounters with other vehicles where the extent of damage and injury is not necessarily related to fault. The Road Ready initiative was specifically designed to ensure all staff are aware of these potential hazards and exposures. The Schertz Public Works Department has exemplified a proactive approach, successfully completing major activities associated with the Road Ready process. The enclosed certificate recognizes the organization's completion of 5 Road Ready badges and the dedication of all staff to provide a safe and healthy workplace. This effort is paramount to the partnership the Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool seeks to create with its members. We look forward to continued partnership in loss prevention and risk management. Thank you for your commitment and congratulations once again on this remarkable achievement. Sincerely, Irvin P. Janik, our loss prevention manager. Next, the Road Ready Recognition City of Schertz. This certifies that the Public Works Department has achieved all Road Ready badges, demonstrated a commitment to employee safety and fulfilling the requirements for the Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool Loss Prevention Program. And it's signed by Irvin Yannick and myself, Randy Garza. So I want to thank you all for this.
Thank you.
And here's your letter.
Hi, my name is Desiree Johnson. I'm the Administrative Assistant for Public Works. I just wanted to thank Randy with TML and Nancy Tummelson. She is our Risk and Safety Specialist, for those of you who aren't familiar with her, for their guidance and assistance throughout the program. It also wouldn't have been possible without the help of our training and certification team, Kevin Anderson, Demetrio Martinez, and Paul Lopez, who couldn't be here. Over the course of 6 months, we were able to obtain all 5 badges of the program. And here at the City of Schertz Public Works Department, we place a big emphasis on safety and training to help promote a safe and knowledgeable environment for employees and community. Once again, thank you to everyone who participated to help make this happen and for helping Schertz achieve the status of being the first city in Central Texas to receive this merit.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That was involved in it.
We'll move on. Next on the agenda is the announcements of upcoming city events. Mr. James?
We do have a few, Mayor. This coming Friday, October 18th, we have music and movies in the park. We're doing Nightmare Before Christmas. That's 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Wendy Swan Memorial Park at 4601 Cherry Tree Drive. All ages welcome. The next day, Saturday, October 19th, is another Star Party. That's 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Crescent Bend Nature Park, 12805 Schaefer Road. And our next city council meeting is October 22nd at 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Okay. Announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a really successful national night out. We had 30 neighborhoods, which is the most we've ever had, register for their NNO event. And it was great to see the communities come together and support this event. We had a great time hanging out and meeting the neighbors and all of our staff and council getting out there. The Public Works Division, or Public Works Department, I want to give kudos to Anthony Jimenez, Miguel Sandoval, and Jorge Guzman for their prompt and professional response to a water leak repairs on, at 7537 FM 1518 North, and on October 3rd. Some of our residents, David and Teresa Vick, were impressed with the responsiveness, and I think we don't often realize that these guys get called out in the middle of the night and have to do some pretty tough work. So also, congratulations to, I don't see her back there anymore, but Cassie Paddock, our recreation manager. She was recognized by the National Recreation and Parks Association during their Best of the Best awards ceremony at their national conference for receiving the prestigious NRPA Young Professionals Award, Young Professional Award. Richard Gomez earned his license from the TDLR as a code enforcement officer, and the planning staff, like Emily alluded to earlier, the P&Z and city leadership received the Planning Excellence Award from the American Planning Association Texas chapter, and also we had the city receive the TML Excellence Award, Texas Municipal League Excellence Award, for the library's Adopt a Grandparent program. And this is an extreme honor that we were able to achieve 2 years in a row If you remember last year, we did it for the Yellow Dot program. But the Excellence Award really highlights the best of the best in the city. And the Adopt a Grandparent Award, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of like the angel tree, where you adopt a grandparent and take care of them during Christmas with presents and whatnot. We did have some promotions. Taryn Jaramillo promoted from EMT to paramedic. Antonio Wilson promoted from certified HVAC tech to contractor HVAC tech. And Patrick Buligman promoted from police cadet to police officer. And those are my announcements, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Announcements and recognitions by the mayor. During this last TML conference, our council member Hayward was no longer the TML president-elect. She is the TML president for 2024-2025. Congratulations. All right, next on the agenda is the hearing the residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the city council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the council, for the record, please state your name and address. Now, we do have 2 public hearings on the agenda today, and if you signed up, you do have an option. You can speak during the hearing the residents, hold off until the public hearing, or speak at both. The option is yours. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, please call our first speaker.
Maggie Titterington.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, Mr. Williams. A few things we have coming up. We have our Shred Day that is being put on by our Young Professionals Hyper Group. It's this Saturday at the Chamber offices in Schertz, the Kramer House, that's 1730 Schertz Parkway. And it's from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can bring up to 5 boxes full of papers. And it is a free shred day, but we are doing a suggested donation of $5 because we're doing a fundraiser for Rescue Pets Serving Vets. Very worthy cause that not only rescues animals, but matches them up with vets for comfort animals. So if you all have stuff you need to shred, please bring it out 9 to 12 this Saturday. Also, we have our last Epic Education class of the year. It's on the 30th at the Schertz Civic Center. It is a speed business education class. So there's 5 speakers, 25 minutes worth of topic, and then a last roundtable session of all of them. Let me see, I brought this up on my phone. It's Unmasking Success, Turning Imposter Syndrome into a Superpower. Imposter syndrome, I guess, is a very hot topic right now. Business ethics, how to stay out of jail. We all must know that. 10 must-dos for payroll and HR and employee benefits, unlocking teamwork, and social media essentials for small business growth. So we have Starbucks and Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union that are sponsoring the breakfast. It's from 8 to 11. You can register online at thechamber.info. And the last thing I have is we're having our last coffee at the Chamber of the year, October 25th, 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., sponsored by Community Impact Newspaper. And it's just a come as you want, get some free coffee and treats, and visit with the staff and other business members in the community. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Next, we have Martha and Lane Johnson. They were here earlier for the fentanyl awareness.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they're here.
Is that it?
Correct, that's it, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, we'll move on. Consent agenda items are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to council and available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. Item number 1, minutes for September 17th and September 24th. Item number 2, appointments, reappointments, and resignations, City of Schertz, boards, commissions, and committees. Item number 3, resolution number 24R139. Item number 4, resolution number 24R128. Item number 5, resolution number 24R138. Item number 6, resolution number 24R101. Item number 7, resolution number 24R82. Item number 8, resolution number 24R135. And item number 9, resolution number 24R136. Council, do any of these need to be removed for separate action? Seeing no comment, is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 9?
So move.
Second.
A motion made by Councilmember Watson and second by Councilmember Hayward. Any comments? None. Council, please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 yeas, no objection, motion passes. Next item. Discussion and action items. Resolution number 24R131. Authorizing a resolution accepting a petition for voluntary annexation of approximately 3.014 acres known as a portion of Comal County Property Identification Number 79004, Comal County, Texas. Ms. Delgado, floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is for Resolution 24R131, accepting a petition of voluntary annexation for 3.014 acres. Emily Delgado, Planning Manager. So as we all remember the lovely meetings in July of this year, we approved ordinances to annex over 3,000 acres into the city of Schertz based on expiring delayed annexation development agreements. As part of that process, Comal County Property Identification Numbers 79004, 79006, and 79009, owned by Timothy and Charlene Phi, were scheduled to be annexed and zoned. However, as part of that annexation effort, City Council approved Resolution 24R81, which authorized the approval of a development agreement with that property owner, who owns approximately 100.535 acres of property, of which approximately 1 acre is utilized as their homestead, and the remainder is for agricultural purposes. As part of that agreement, the property owner authorized the annexation of the agricultural land, while the residential land was to remain in the ETJ. Based on that agreement, at the July 16th City Council meeting, Resolution 24, in addition to approving Resolution 24R81, ordinances 24A49 and A50 annex Comal County Property IDs 79006 and 79009. However, 79004 is the portion of the property that is utilized for residential purposes. It's approximately 4 acres, but only 1 acre of that is actually utilized for residential. The remaining 3.014 is utilized for agricultural purposes. And based on the agreement that City Council authorized, the agricultural property is proposed to be annexed. Resolution 24R131 is that first City Council step. Accepting the annexation petition tonight is not the actual annexation of the property, it's just that first step in the series of the annexation process. So to get your bearings, here is FM 482. You'll see the gray properties are already in the city limits. The Phi property here was annexed with that group in July. However, 79004, which is this square, is part of the property that was part of that development agreement. The white is where their actual residential structure is, the 1 acre, and then the green portion, 3.014 acre, is what is proposed to start that annexation process tonight. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 24R131 to accept a petition for voluntary annexation of approximately 3.014 acres within Comal County, more specifically known as a portion of Comal County Property Identification Number 79004.
Thank you, Ms. Delgado. All right, council, floor is open for discussion. Seeing no discussion, is there a motion to approve 24R131?
Second.
Yes. Yes, I haven't heard a second. Oh, he didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Watson, second by Councilmember Brown. Any other discussion? Council, please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 yeas, no objection, motion passes. Next item, resolution number 24R137, authorizing a contract with AOX Enterprises for the purchase of video recording system for the Schertz Police Department interview and
Intoxilizer.
Rooms. Okay, Chief, floor is yours.
Good evening. I'm Jim Lyer, your police chief. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Mr. Williams. Tonight we're talking about 24R137. It's authorizing a contract with Axon Enterprises for the purchase of a video recording system for the Schertz Police Department interview room and intoxilizer rooms. City Council approved a resolution 23R111 on October 10th, 2023 that authorized the expenditures with Axon Enterprises to purchase new body-worn cameras, our in-car video cameras, and taser replacements. The Schertz Police Department has also identified the need to replace outdated recording system, which was WatchGuard. In the interview and toxilizer room, staff recommends the contracting with Axon Enterprise, a buy-board cooperative vendor for a new video recording system. Axon Interview Solutions enables an agency to record video and witness suspect interviews, add descriptive metadata, and automatically transfer to the axonevidence.com. It offers robust security features and comprehensive platform to support and provide crucial and defensible evidence for prosecution. The city's fiscal impact will be $52,556.55. This project was budgeted for the fiscal year 2023-24, and staff will include this item in the next budget adjustment brought before council to move any unused funds into the new fiscal year. Do you have any questions?
All right, thank you, Chief. All right, council, floor is open for discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 24R137.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Brown, second by Councilmember Watson. Council, any other comments? Please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next item, resolution number 24R142, a resolution by the City Council to amend the fee schedule. Mr. Walters.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is James Walters. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Schertz. When reviewing the fee schedule, getting ready to implement the new fees for the water and sewer rates, staff found that in an effort to simplify the fee schedule to closely more align with the current meter sizes, we had accidentally removed the wrong size rate from the table. Upon further review, there's about 9 customers that we would adjust the rates for going forward, getting rid of the larger meter rate for some and others leaving them where they are. This is basically what the 23-24 showed for the correct size. This is what we originally adopted. And then this is the proposed, the 2% increase. So you see that we don't want to actually charge about 2,000 customers this large monthly amount. This is the base fees we're talking about. The per 1,000 gallon fees were accurate. But what this will do is it'll actually take those 9 customers and actually give them a lower rate, which could be an annual loss of the city, about $9,600. By doing so, we believe this is the best course for the city of Schertz. If we were to take all of the other businesses, which are the vast majority, not just the 9, but the other 2,000 almost, we could then compare to see if they more closely align with the water usage rate. Is closer to the 210 level or closer to the almost $300 level, and then go through and swap out their meter and do that. Staff doesn't believe that's worth it in the long run, and we will take the meter sizes back and the base fees back to the next 5-year rate plan and double check that we are still within the realm of accuracy on what we should be charging for our base fees. Again, this won't change really, this will have no material impact on the annual forecast or what's being charged with those customers. And I didn't touch on it in the beginning, but sort of the big issue that kind of caused before the meter swap out, when we changed to the new meter types, we had 2 types of each of these meters, a 2-inch compound and a 2-inch turbine, let's say. The compound had allowed for less flow, even though it was the same size. The turbine had higher flow, which means they could use more water, but it was still like the 2-inch diameter. When we swapped out and we went to the new meters, we got rid of all of those turbines and kept the compounds, which is the lower ones. But the new meters, so we had just one 2-inch meter now. Now the new meters actually added for a higher flow, more closely linked to the turbines. which is why the fee schedule kind of got adjusted and proposed the way it was originally. But looking at the actual usage by customer class and what they're looking at, we're only talking about 9 corporations in the city of Schertz that would be affected by this proposed change. That's fairly quick, but if you have any questions over specifics with the proposed rate change, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walters. All right, council, floor is open for discussion. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution number 24R142?
So move.
Second.
Have a motion made by Councilmember Macaluso, second by Councilmember Watson. Any other comments? Please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 yeas, no objection, motion passes. All right, next item. Item number 13, resolution number 24R140, authorizing a construction contract with R.L. Jones LP for the 2024 span resurfacing project. Ms. Woodley, floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kathy Woodley, City Engineer. Well, I'm pinch hitting for John Nowak this evening, and Brian reminded me that John always starts with a joke. Very sorry. I did not prepare well enough. I don't have a joke. You'll have to wait till the next time John's here. But I'll try not to be too super dry. So what this is this is the next group of projects for the street preservation and maintenance work that we do, and this is resurfacing, which involves base repair of some areas of the streets that are selected, and then a slurry seal over the entire area. We bid the project, and we had originally hoped to have the construction of this done prior to this new fiscal year starting. We had, I think, $2.154 million budgeted for it, and we bid out work slightly in excess of that. We usually do that just in case we get great costs coming back, and we can stretch our dollars further. But the cost came in fairly well, but slightly over that initial estimate. But because we're in the new fiscal year, what we're going to do is a couple things. We're going to take advantage of some savings from the last spam resurfacing project that we had. I think we were able to put together $62,000 that was saved there. And we're going to dip into this fiscal year's streets department outsourced maintenance funds that is dedicated to spam for these sorts of projects. So that we can actually accomplish all of the streets that we had hoped that we might be able to do. So the list of the areas: Kensington Ranch, Savannah Bluff, Ridge at Scenic Hills, Fairhaven, Mobile Villa Estates, Englewood, Aranda Lane, Haley's Cove, and Longleaf Parkway. And also Schertz Parkway will be resurfaced from Woodland Oaks all the way to 35. So then with the recent work that's been done in the past few years, Schertz Parkway will be in great shape. So we are asking that you authorize the city manager to execute the contract with R.L. Jones for approximately $2.3 million and not to exceed of $2.4 million to get these areas resurfaced.
All right, thank you, Ms. Woodley. Council, floor is open for discussion. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution number 24R140?
So move.
Second.
A motion made by Councilmember Watson, second by Councilmember Hayward. Any other comments? Council, please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Next item, we have a public hearing. Ordinance number 24S155. Conduct a public hearing and consider amendments to Part 3 of the Schertz Code of Ordinances, Unified Development Code, UDC, to Article 4, Procedures and Applications, and Article 5, Zoning Districts. This is our first reading. Mr. Haas, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Mr. Williams. Ordinance 24S155, UDC amendments to Article 4 and Article 5. Samuel Haas, Senior Planner. So the background for this, every time we present a zone change or a specific use permit or UDC amendments, at the end of our presentation, we always kind of read through this enumerated list of criteria. You know, it's our favorite part of every presentation, I'm sure. And so as staff has been using these over the last few years, and we've kind of realized that as our city practices have been updated, we kind of need to update some of the languages in this as well. We did some target city research as well to kind of see how everybody else is doing things in Texas, and we decided to use this opportunity to kind of modernize some of the language and to streamline it and simplify it a little bit for people who are reading our UDC. So to start off, we're doing this in 4 sections, and to start off with the first one we're proposing is the comprehensive plan amendments. On the left side, as I'm going through this, you'll see the current text, and on the right side, you'll see the proposed. When you see a strike through is what's currently there that we're proposing to eliminate, and anything in red is just language that we're adding. So as you see through number 1 here, you see that we struck through safe, orderly, and efficient healthful development. Staff felt this was a little redundant. There's already health and safety in this sentence. Just thought that just for the sake of brevity, just kind of eliminating it and make it a little more clear. Also, you'll see that we've kind of eliminated some language as well that taken into account proposed map amendments, and these are kind of self-explanatory. And then when we've had the opportunity, we combine 2 and 4, and we've done this in other sections as well, which I'll kind of touch on in a minute. But we've combined 2 and 4 and just added goals and objectives to number 2. And then the last thing that we've really touched in this one is on the current text, you'll see on number 6, it says other criteria, which at the discretion of Planning and Zoning and City Council are deemed relevant. Staff changed that language, is proposing to change that language to factors, which are deemed relevant. So not having the discretion of City Council, just kind of broadening the definition of that criteria, allowing for other things to be considered. Moving on, next is the UDC amendments, 2147D. So kind of some of the similar changes here, just kind of streamlining some of the language on number 1, combining 2 and 3, where you can see the consistent with goals and objectives and policies. Also adding number 3, we do this a lot for our UDC amendments. So staff is proposing to add this in red here on number 3. The proposed amendment corrects an error, meets the challenge of changing conditions, or is in response to changes in state law. Every 2 years we seem to be updating the UDC with something that the state is making us do. So we thought we'd add that in there as part of our criteria for approval. And again, on number 4, just change that language to factors instead of criteria. So in the next 2, so the zone change, 2154D, this is where we do the criteria for approval here. We made a lot of changes here. There's 8 criteria currently, and staff is proposing to simplify that down to 4. And a lot of that, what you'll see is, some of the similar changes here that we felt were redundant. The zoning map amendment language, which I'll kind of touch on later, that we kind of eliminated there. 4, 5, and 6, a lot of this we touch on later stages in the development process and the platting to make sure that there's adequate sewer capacity and roads and things like that. Decided to propose to eliminate the error in original zoning as a criteria. I think that would be kind of self-explanatory, that's why they're doing it. The back taxes thing as well, I'll touch on that in a minute. I think that it goes back to a previous city charter. Not certain on that, but that's kind of did some detective work on that. And I'll kind of explain that in a minute. But the zoning map amendment, deciding to eliminate that altogether because I believe it was a holdover from a previous time when the maps and the zone changes weren't updated at the same time. But we have new technology now. We have a whole GIS departments that when a zone change is approved, essentially it gets changed the very next morning when staff comes to the office. So that is a bit unnecessary to have a zoning map amendment because it's always going to happen with a change now. This back taxes thing that's currently in there, again, unsure why that's in there. Every time we get up here, we always say this is not a factor for consideration. So staff is proposing to just eliminate that criteria altogether. Nearest we could tell is there was this language in the 2012-2013 charter about assessing taxes and when to collect them. In the 2015 charter, that got scrapped, so maybe could be a holdover from that time. We're unsure, but just thought I'd throw that out there. The next section is specific use permit, and this is directly as a result of a change in city practice. We decided some time ago that Well, I should back up and say that we used to, when people would apply for a specific use permit, make them do the whole site plan process. So site plan, landscape plan, tree mitigation plan, stormwater management plan, traffic analysis. And applicants were putting in all this time and effort and money and then essentially getting denied. And so some time ago, the city decided that we weren't going to make them do that whole process. And a lot of this criteria kind of pertains to that process. So the reason why you'll see we've proposing to eliminate quite a few. There's 10 in total, and we're shrinking that down to 5. And it's similar, where we're able to combine things we did. We added this number 3 here. The proposed use is compatible with and preserves the character and integrity of adjacent developments. That's essentially rewording a couple of these and combining them into one. Number 4, you'll see the proposed use will not adversely affect the overall health, safety, and general welfare of the city. As I'm sure y'all know that when we have specific use permits, they are considered special, and then we need a special consideration. And I think the adverse effect one kind of is emblematic of that consideration. And then number 5, again, changing that language to the factors language. And so you'll see that we went from 10 criteria on the specific use one down to 5. So, as always, we read the criteria for approval, and when we're making our analysis, we do the 2147D UDC amendments. It's funny because we're doing criteria for approval, but I'll just read these off one at a time. The proposed amendment promotes health, safety, and general welfare of the city and the safe, orderly, efficient, healthful development of the city. So the UDC does function better when it matches current city practices. It's better for residents of Schertz, applicants, and staff when there's continuity and clarity in the UDC. And streamlining our criteria approval will assist with that orderly and efficient development. An amendment to the text is consistent with other policies of the UDC. Many of these proposed amendments are reflective of changes in the city charter, adopted ordinances, or updated city practices. These amendments are also consistent with, as a result, are consistent with the policies of the UDC and the cities. Any proposed amendment is consistent with the goals and objectives of the UDC and the city. I like to bring in the strategic plan here. When its stated goals for operational values of the city is to be proactive. Being proactive means initiating change by anticipating future situations in order to make things happen. It's also the responsibility of staff to be continuously improving and evolving and forward thinking. These amendments would achieve these goals in the strategic plan. And then 4, other criteria which at the discretion of the Planning and Zoning Commission are deemed relevant and important in consideration for the amendment. Staff has received no special consideration, and this public hearing provides the opportunity for City Council to determine this. These amendments align with the goals, objectives, and policies of the UDC. Staff is recommending approval of 24S 155. And on September 4th, 2024, the Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing and recommended approval with a 6-0 vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. All right. This item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the City Council in reference to this subject? Limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before you address the council, please state your name and address. No one's moving forward, going once, going twice. Public hearing is closed. All right, council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Watson.
I motion we approve ordinance 24S 155.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Brown? Okay. All right. Councilmember Westbrook, you had comments?
Yes. Definition of adversely impact.
Yeah, so that is something that we will be able to
Adversely affect. Okay.
Yeah, adverse affect the overall. So I think when we're, just to kind of make it prescient, a gas station, right? You know, is this gas station going to adversely affect something, the overall health of the community? And that's part of the criteria for approval for the specific use permits. And this language was borrowed from other cities that have it as their criteria for approval. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but staff looked at, when we were doing our target city research, said that one would be a good one to include because we deal with this all the time. You know, does this specific use, basically does the good outweigh the bad, essentially? And that's there for the judgment call for staff and for council, planning and zoning commissioners as well.
So it's broad, but it's subjective, what
Correct.
you're saying, so, all right. And then can you go to the last where your objectives for your staff? I think it was the last page when you were talking about trying to align the, keep going. Wait, stop, go back one. Being proactive, all right. Forward thinking, so just, is there a way you can just sort of tell me a little bit about how you and your staff go about being proactive and initiating change and sort of this forward thinking? It just seems like sometimes y'all propose something, and then when it comes to the council, sometimes it doesn't always go the way that you anticipated. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can better align what y'all are thinking with what we're thinking, and it all meshes together, and so there's less consternation or something in this future decisions.
Well, I think with this specific ordinance, I think what we saw was, the criteria for approval didn't match what our current practices was. And rather than just keep coming to you all the time and saying the same stuff over and over again, we wanted to be proactive and try to, improve these things. I know that didn't come at the direction of city council, but something that we constantly use these, and so we felt like this update kind of matches what we're doing in practice. And I can't speak to other, and maybe you can.
Yeah, let me maybe chime in with this. And I think Sam was referencing on this kind of us coming forward with changes in a proactive way. Hey, we see this issue, we see where we can improve something. What I assume you're talking about more is these items, these cases that come before city council, such as zoning cases or SUPs, and staff is recommending one thing, and council then says, nope, we want to go a different direction than that.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I think staff sees that as well. And I'll be blunt, we're struggling with that too. And frankly, the PDD item, the workshop item you have that's the last on the agenda, before Emily gets up with a really thorough presentation on PDDs, I'm going to get up and kind of try to get at what I see and I think staff sees as those core issues, which are, effectively council setting policy and direction, and there being clarity, and not always, right? But call it 90% of the time, 95% of the time, we know what that policy direction is. And so staff anticipates that based on those factors, assuming we're not missing something. And so staff's recommendation is aligned with P&Z's recommendation, is aligned with city council's recommendation. And we don't seem to have that. And I'll say this just as a segue to that. One of the things is we don't have a lot of alignment among council. We have a lot of those votes that come in split. And that's okay. That's part of the process. That's kind of why you get elected. But the challenge that creates is there's a lack of clarity in terms of where we're trying to go, what we're trying to achieve, and why we're trying to do that. So I think the last item, we're going to try to really directly cover that, and you're probably going to get pressed by staff tonight to say, okay, that's great. I still don't know what you all as a body want and as a group want. And maybe we'll never quite get it, but maybe we get closer together.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, Sam.
Council, any other comments? I have a question concerning your comments. It's not whether or not this council is going through a direction. I think the staff's main purpose is to make sure that it's aligned with everything that we have placed on the UDC. And that's where your recommendation should lie, not what the council thinks. The council will make their decisions. But if you try to align with the UDC and the vision of this council, is never going to be the same. And that's where we have our differences. But your recommendation should be based on, does it meet the Unified Development Code and not what this council thinks?
Right. So if I will, Mayor, maybe let me clarify, maybe I wasn't clear. So particularly with our engineering department, for example, there are very quantifiable criteria that says if the project generates this many trips in the peak hour are over this amount, they have to do a traffic impact analysis. It's a quantifiable, it's math, we can all look at it and agree to disagree. When they do a stormwater management plan for a project and it says you can't increase the rate of flow off a property, that's all based on a bunch of math. I certainly can't do it, the engineers can, the developers' engineers can. It's exactly quantifiable. But when we have someone come forward with a zoning case, it's not a math question, right? It's how we take the criteria that we read, and to your point earlier in terms of how it adversely impacts. Our judgment call on whether a proposed zoning request or an SUP request adversely impacts a property is going to be a little bit different for all of us. And it could be significantly different, right? Because it's not a quantifiable math question. It's not, is the building permit for the house doesn't meet the 20-foot setback. It's whether or not those broad criteria that are subject to interpretation and subject how we meet it, whether it meets that or not. That seems to really be the issue that we have, you know, because if you think about it, as we've come forward with these ordinances, we've had some good questions. We've had some suggestions how we can make them better from some of y'all that we've adjusted on the fly. And staff's generally said, no, we agree, that's a good point, let's do that. We generally agreed on that, right? We come forward with these ordinance changes and we do it. Where we struggle are the zoning requests and it's the SUP requests. And that's because it's not this quantifiable math question, right? It's about, you can read these criteria. If you want to go back to what you're proposing, even to go in with, right? So the criteria for approval, it's the, you know, whether or not this is consistent with the policies and adopted comprehensive land plan or other applicable adopted plans. I will tell you this, for every one of these cases generally that we've had in my entire tenure here, I could come up with languages and policies in that to say, this is why you would not approve it, and this is why you would approve it, right? It's rare that it's all one way or all the other. It's a balancing act. And so that, I think, is my point. And so you're right. Part of what staff has to do is staff gets up and makes a recommendation based on our professional opinion and based on what we understand the goals and objectives of council are. And we make that recommendation, and then we talk about this, and then we go sit down, and if council asks questions, we'll get up and try to answer those questions, and we go sit down, and then when council makes that decision, our job is to make that as successful as possible, whether or not it was consistent with staff's recommendation or not. That's what our job is about. But part of where we run into a problem is if staff is consistently recommending the opposite of the way council wants to go, where 10 of 10 zoning cases, staff is saying, do this, and council's saying, do that, there's a disconnect there. And that disconnect is not helpful. It's not helpful for our residents. It's not helpful for developers. It's not helpful for you. And that really is where that alignment needs to be. And as I said, you won't get it 100% of the time. But we generally should try to be on the same page to say, this is where we're headed. This is what we want to be, and this is what we're trying to get to, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but I can honestly say that the council really considers staff's recommendation very heavily when making their decision.
I don't disagree with that, Mayor. I think staff understands that, right? And at times, the fact that council does consider that, there's some passion coming from council about staff's recommendation. And while we may at the time think of that as a little bit of a negative, it is because council does factor that. And the other thing I'll say, and we talk about this too, right, is, and you know, you've heard me probably say this before, we all approach things somewhat differently, right? So staff, we have this perspective from over here as city staff, as bureaucrats, right, reviewing those things. We aren't elected by the citizens of Schertz to make these decisions. You are. And so you're going to sit over here and have a somewhat different perspective. Right. And so sometimes inherently you'll look at things differently than staff looks at it. And that's perfectly fine. That's okay. And where we have some of those, that's why some of that 10% we may not see eye to eye. So I would agree with you. It's not about you not appreciating staff's recommendation. It's about us all trying to move forward to this agreed upon direction. and how we do that, because again, it's not helpful to not have that alignment when we're trying to make a decision, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Brown.
I think it really comes down to everything that staff is doing is correct. You put, a project comes through, planning and zoning, you hear all the pros and cons, everything else, and you make a recommendation. When we have a room full of citizens out here that disagree and we listen to all of that, even if technically it is absolutely airtight package, it's the emotions that get in the way, and I would love. It's a hard thing to do when it comes down to that, but just on these housekeeping items, I think you did a real good job. Reduce a lot of verbiage, reduce a lot of time that you're going to spend, before something changes. So I think they're good.
Thank you so much for that presentation. On that we do have a motion to approve ordinance number 24S155 made by Councilmember Watson and second by Councilmember Brown. Council, any other comments? Please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 ayes, no objections, motion passes. Next item, item number 15. Ordinance number 24S156, conduct a public hearing and consider amendments to Part 3 of the Schertz Code of Ordinances, Unified Development Code, UDC 2, Article 5, Zoning Districts, and Article 10, Parking Standards. This is our first reading. Mr. Haas, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, Mr. Williams. Ordinance 24S156, UDC amendments to Article 5 and Article 10, Samuel Haas, Senior Planner. So this will be a very familiar presentation for a lot of y'all because we did a workshop on this on August 6, 2024, and we've kind of run the traps and we've initiated the actual process here. So this is all pertaining to adjustments that we are proposing to our R4 district and then also establishing a new R5 district. And what the goal of this is to really kind of capture some trends in development, and that there's these lower density dispersed townhome style developments, what a lot of people are calling build to rent. They're multifamily in function, but in form they look essentially like a neighborhood. So you'll be familiar, this is a Schertz station that is under construction right now. It's up on 35. They have, this is a rendering of what it's going to look like. The general business is up front, but in the back, we didn't really have a zoning district for them, so they went the PDD route. And so in order to kind of, again, capture that, we were proposing a couple changes, establish a new zoning district and modify the existing apartment multifamily district R4. So the first one for, the first proposal for establishing the new district, this is the middle density R5. It's lower density than traditional apartment complexes, and it also provides incentives for smaller development and in an effort to capture market trends and provide a variety of housing in Schertz. So we'll do that by proposing amendments to 5 sections, and I'll go through those one at a time. So 2152 is a table in the UDC that just establishes zoning districts, adding R5 to that. 2155 is a statement of purpose and intent. This is kind of the narrative paragraph for every zoning district. Middle density R5 is intended to provide developments that offer a variety of housing types. This district is a suitable transition between single-family residential and commercial and/or denser multifamily developments comprised of attached or detached residential dwelling units. When tracts in this district are 1 acre or less, density shall not exceed 16 units per acre. These tracts will be required to adhere to single-family design requirements in Article 9. And when tracts exceed 1 acre, 12 units per acre, and the tracts will be, these tracts will be required to adhere to multifamily design requirements in Article 9. So the next section will be 2157. This is the dimensional and design table. You'll see here that the R5, we're proposing that the minimum square footage for the lot is a 1/4 acre. And then there's no width or depth requirement. And then the setbacks are pretty similar to all our other districts, 25, 10, and 10. And then we have a height requirement or height maximum of 35 feet as well. So one of the changes that you'll see since the workshop is this key down here called Q. So it says refer to 2157B8, which is this. And this was done a lot of back and forth between the private side, our fire department, and planning to kind of work out some language on how to do some fire safety. And essentially, what this section is talking about is the space in between buildings. Because a lot of these come in as one large lot, and they are multi-family in function, but in form, they look like little neighborhoods. We don't have those like setback requirements for fire safety, right? So we had to kind of work in some things and make sure it's still gonna be a usable district for developers, and that's not gonna just sit on the shelf. So fire and planning kind of came up with these requirements. And you'll see, so essentially when an HVAC unit is not within the building separation space, they can be 10 feet apart. This allows our fire team to go in there and fight fires and move around in that space. When HVAC units are within the building separation space, or either structure is above 1 story, the minimum separation is 15 feet. So if there is an HVAC unit, you gotta provide a little bit more space. The 2-story pertains to ladder placement and how they get up and fight those fires. If HVAC units shall be on opposite sides, that way you can't crowd the space with HVAC units. And these additional standards are not required if you put a fire suppression system in the building. If there's a sprinkler system in the building, fire says go for it. So the next section is 21.5.8. These are a lot of the same permitted uses that are within all our other residential districts. Gated community, church, multifamily dwelling, single family dwelling, school, and 2-family dwelling. Parking, so for tracts exceeding 1 acre, it's gonna be 2 spaces per unit, and going and providing that kind of bonus for trying to go smaller, for tracts 1 acre or less, it's 1 space per unit. And to sum up kind of some of those bonuses that you get for trying to do a smaller development, so if it's 1 acre or less, you get 16 units per acre on a 1/4 acre lot minimum. This means you're only gonna get 4 to 16 units per acre, 1 parking space required per unit. You're required to adhere to the single family design requirements, which is no 20-foot landscape buffer from the right of way, no 20-foot landscape buffer next to single family use, and then no 8-foot masonry wall and 2 trees per lot rather than 9 trees per acre. And so what are these gonna look like? The 1/4 acre lots, you're gonna get the 4plexes, the 1/2 acre, you can get up to 8 units. And then for 1 acre, you can get 16 units. Now I will say that there's still, height requirements maximum, so we're not gonna get these giant tall 16-unit blocks. And there's still other challenges to every parcel, drainage ditches and things like that. That's gonna, essentially gonna allow developers to be creative with it. And so over 1 acre, pretty straightforward. You get 12 units per acre, 2 parking spaces per unit, and you're required to adhere to all multifamily design requirements in Article 9. And what does that look like? It looks like what's going in right now, what's already been approved. So the next thing as part of this proposal is to modify R4. Since we are establishing a new kind of lower density district, we thought some modifications to R4 would be appropriate. So denser, taller, but more selective on the appropriateness of location. So here is the narrative paragraph, the same thing as before, that's really busy, so I'll just clean it up for you right there. So this district is a suitable transition between single-family and commercial uses. However, apartment, multifamily residential districts shall not be located in areas where they would increase traffic with access through single-family neighborhoods. That's a big concern that a lot of residents have. And they shall be located adjacent to arterial streets. The maximum density shall be 35 units per acre. 20% of the total platted area shall be provided as common usable open space. And so 21.5.7, this is what that would look like. So we're also proposing to increase the minimum lot area to 1 acre. That's that 43,560 number. The minimum width to 400 feet. That is to ensure 2 points of access, which is always an issue trying to get. And then the max height, increasing that to 50 feet. Now, the reason we kind of chose some of these numbers is we looked around again at all our target cities, we call them. And the height, it looks like we're a little under. Honestly, it looks like we're a little on par with how everybody does density. Some cities do a lot more, some cities do a little bit less, some cities are right on where we are. The reason we chose 35 is because Schertz Gateway, which is another PDD that's going in on Interstate 35 and Schwab Road, that was recently approved with 35 units per acre, so we thought if council was comfortable with that, then that's okay. And then the 45 feet, council recently approved the 1518 apartments down there, and We decided to go with just an even 50 to provide a little bit of extra space for architectural features. And you'll see here that this is a 51-foot building. And still only 4 stories. So it's essentially just going up a story. And again, with the placement, shall be located to arterial streets. Everything you see here in red or in yellow is an arterial street. And with these proposed amendments, essentially the R4 district would only be appropriate adjacent to these roads. And this is northern Schertz here. So you'll see this is 35 here in gray. So 3009, FM 1103, FM 482, these are arterial streets. Schwab Road here. This is central Schertz here. You'll see basically Schertz Parkway and FM 3009 and 1518 over here. And then of course southern Schertz, portions of Lower Seguin, portions of Trainer Hill, and then 1518. So in summary, establishing these amendments will establish R5, minimum quarter-acre lots, 12 units per acre. Unless you go under an acre, then you get some bonuses. And then modifying R4, minimum 1-acre lots, 400 feet width to get that access, going up a little bit in density, going up a little bit in height, and being more selective with where we place these districts. Criteria for approval, 2147D, the proposed amendment promotes the health, safety, and general welfare of the city and the safe, orderly, efficient, and healthful development of the city. So the UDC functions better when we provide adequate zoning districts, district options for applicants. So we have a new one that's going to be an option for people. And then it balances the demand for housing while attempting to alleviate the friction between established neighborhoods and incoming developments. Number 2, the amendment to the text is consistent with other policies of the UDC and city. So with the approval of the Schertz Gateway PDD and Schertz Station PDD, these amendments are attempting to codify in the UDC what has been recently adopted policy. And again, bringing in the strategic plan's policy values for high quality life. The high quality life is a well-planned community that creates convenient living and is not limited options for work, live, and play. So these amendments are consistent with other policies in the city. Any proposed amendments is consistent with the goals and objectives of the UDC. The UDC strives to prevent overcrowding of land and avoid undue concentration or diffusion of population. So we attempted to create these amendments to help balance the single-family neighborhoods with high-density apartments. The UDC goal to minimize these conflicts among these land uses and land and buildings. So providing an in-between of housing option and revising the R4 will help with this single-family high-density apartment kind of friction. The strategic plan stated goals for operational values of the city is also to be innovative and to be proactive, as we spoke before. So these amendments are consistent with the UDC and city goals and objectives, and other criteria at which, at the discretion of Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, are deemed relevant and important in the consideration of the amendment. So again, like I mentioned before, on August 6, 2024, City Council had a workshop. The council received the proposal positively and directed staff to move forward with the amendment process. So here we are. No special consideration from the Planning and Zoning Commission or City Council, and the public hearing provides an opportunity for City Council to determine this. Are there any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Haas. All right, this item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the City Council in reference to this subject? Going once, going twice. Public hearing is closed. All right, Council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Hayward.
Sam, thank you. I truly appreciate the fact that you're being proactive, as you said in your previous presentation, being proactive, looking at where things can be and how to alleviate the conflicts. I truly appreciate your department taking that opportunity to find that mix of where things can be. I still think with the apartments, I like the fact that they're on these, arterial roads. There are still going to be some people that probably will say, not right here. Just Saturday's resident from Crossvine said they were upset with council because we approved the apartments right across the street. It's 1518 and it's a major road. And so I think there will still be some friction, but we can't make everybody happy. We have to do it. And I like this way. It makes those developers that are coming in look at this process and go, okay, this is where I can put an apartment. This is where I can put that small density living. And so then it gives the city a way to say, it's not happening over there. We've already told you where it can happen. So I appreciate you guys being proactive and hearing the residents, and then hearing from council what we would like to see in the city. And that's the way we make us the corridor of the future, by taking those things into consideration. So thank you.
Councilmember Westbrook, Mayor Pro Tem Westbrook.
Yes, sir. So I think there were two slides. One, it said not increasing traffic in a single-family neighborhood. And then I think towards the end, you said, I think it was phrased a little bit differently, no traffic, adding no no, the first one was not increasing traffic, which was sort of broad. And I think later on it said not increasing traffic within the neighborhood. Do you remember those slides?
Yeah, so I think this is the one you're talking about. So, shall not be located in areas where they would increase traffic with access through single-family neighborhoods.
Okay.
So, a lot of time you'll see proposals that have basically apartment access going through a residential single-family neighborhood. They'll use a stub out or something that's already there and propose apartments. And from what we've heard as one of the main concerns for citizens is that having that access through there is going to cause a lot of issues. You know, having hundreds of units come in all at once is going to create a lot of issues. So by saying that, by putting it here and putting shall not, what we're saying is that you really need to have access to this complex through one of the arterial streets.
Okay. All right, thank you. And so R4, when you said modify R4, I think you started off with fourplexes. What's a duplex? Is that R2?
Yeah, we have an R3 is a duplex. So the reason why we're modifying our R4 is because of the establishment of a new district, R5, which is the fourplexes and the things like that. So now this one won't really cover that particular type of development. Now R5 will cover those, and this will be meant for the bigger projects.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. Councilmember Macaluso.
Yeah, I still want to voice my concern with the proposals that allow one parking spot per unit. I still don't like that idea. And there was something that we saw at the TML, and I know Ms. Hayward was in there. She was on the panel, and then the mayor was in there as well. And it was just outside of San Antonio. There was this tiny home division that was put in. Does opening that up where it says 35 units per acre, could somebody come in and put 35 tiny homes in there with one spot parking per location? Because it was literally to the point where you could not park in front of a house. It's so tight that you could have one car in there, but these are 2-bedroom homes that are 650 square feet.
Right.
And it was their idea of affordable living, but the actual price per square foot was more than what the actual homes in the area were going for. I mean, it was ridiculous, and it was something that I hope we could never would allow to come to Schertz.
So the way the UDC currently is for R4, for multifamily, is this requires 2 units or 2 parking spaces per unit plus 5%. But in the R5 one, you only get that 1 space per unit when you go smaller. It's what we call a bonus, right? So potentially, if you have a 16-unit apartment complex, you could get 16 parking spaces, 4 and 4, 8 and 8. But once you get above that acre, so that means your development's getting a little bit larger, then your density drops to 12 units per acre, and then you have to go to 2 spaces per unit. And so they're kind of separate. So like the 35 units per acre, it would be 2 spaces plus 5% the way our code's currently, and we're not proposing to change that.
I guess, it's maybe outside of this a little bit, but is there some kind of protection in our current UDC that would prevent a development like that from coming in?
Yeah, I think our codes are currently written to prevent that. And
Maybe clarify
yeah.
what you want to prevent. And I mean this sincerely.
Okay, so this development was put into an ETJ.
Right.
So they could bypass some of the standards that the San Antonio area has. Anyway, to me, it was a complete disaster of a development. And it just scared me to think if somebody would have that possibility to bring that into Schertz, which I'm hoping.
And in what way was it a complete disaster? And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to help you understand. Because I can, and if
Okay,
you want, I can take
it's-
a crack at it. 'Cause I can probably guess what
It's
you
the
would say.
size of the lots, the tiny homes, the limited street. It looked like it would be a complete safety concern with cars on the
Yep.
street. I mean, it was just overcrowded use of space, which is something that we directly state we want to avoid, so.
Yeah, so in terms of that, no, because they were all on separate lots, I believe, in that development, right? And so we have other standards that would get you there. This next conversation we're gonna have about PDDs, though, is where we sort of hit that, right? But I think you're right. We've had this discussion about how much parking is needed or not needed. And I think that's while it's not that it's not an important part of it, it's maybe not the most important part of it in terms of this, I would say, what your recommendation is. And so if you want to do something different, you can offer that with this and say, you know, I'm just not comfortable going that one space. I don't know that we need to go 2 spaces, maybe you split the difference or something like that, right, if you will. Or maybe you go, no, I think it needs to be 2 spaces or 3 spaces.
Yeah, I mean, that's my opinion. You know, we don't do that for larger apartment complexes, and I just don't see why we would do it for the smaller ones. To me, it just doesn't make sense.
I totally agree with Councilmember Macaluso. It should be at least a 1.5. You know, you got 4 apartments, you got 6 parking spaces. You know, you're gonna have visitors. And if you have no parking for them, it's gonna create conflict. So, all right. With that, Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, and that development is a single-family home development. It's not a multifamily development. Okay, and I don't like it either. Trust me, I do not like it, because the front pad is the parking lot and no garage. You cannot park a car on the street safely unless you block another driveway, plain and simple. But again, those are not multifamily, those are single-family lots that the developers taken down to 20 feet by 60 feet or something like that, to put these little tiny places on, and they don't meet any of our other criteria. And no, we don't want them.
You want to make a recommendation to move it up to 1.5?
Mayor, can I make one comment?
Yes, sure.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these are used, a lot of times isn't this used more for infill?
Correct.
And where you have these voids, where it's a smaller lot per se, and you're trying to develop that infill. It's not a large collection of a bunch of these. You see it in interior San Antonio, some other areas that are redeveloping.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes, that was the intent of the less than an acre bonus, if you will.
It's something, does it act somewhat of as an encouragement that you can actually fit more unit and maybe take a little less space for parking?
Yes, it was meant as an incentive, because a lot of these lots could be oddly shaped. They might have other kind of developmental challenges like drainage and things like that. And requiring more parking means that's less building, you know, so but if it, you know, it was meant to be just like you said, like an infill sort of development, and it's not meant to as a large swath of land.
Yeah, I understand that. I just think that when you restrict the parking that tight, that it's just going to push cars outside of their
Street
area.
parking and-
Yeah, so
yeah.
it's just, that's the area that I don't like. And it is going to cause friction with the neighbors. They're not going to like it. And I think it just opens up, you know, some issues that we really don't want. And so to me, I would vote to approve if we do not go minimum of less than 1.5 spots.
We can make that change.
So I don't know how I would need to say that in terms of a motion, but that's what I would.
Motion with a modification?
Yeah. Approval with the one modification.
Okay. And do I accept that as a motion, Councilmember Macaluso?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a motion's been made for ordinance number 24S-156 to approve with a modification of 1.5 parking spaces for those small units. And I heard a second by Councilmember Watson. Council, any other comments? Yes,
I had a
Councilmember
question.
Hayward.
When we did apartments a while ago, didn't we change that from 2 spots when we were talking about the parking lot size? Didn't we change that from 2 to 1 with some guest parking, or was that just a discussion?
We left it at 2, I think.
Yeah, it was, the change is 2 per unit plus 5%. Yeah, and it was more than that previously.
But in this situation, we're talking about the small units is what
Correct.
he referred to.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Any other comments? All right, council, please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes. All right. Next item, we have a workshop. Workshop regarding the Plan Development District PDDs. Mr. James.
Thank you. As I said before, I'm gonna start a little bit on this, and then we'll see where that goes. And then Emily has a very thorough presentation on plan development districts. But as I said, I don't think the core issue really is about the specifics and the technical aspects of plan development districts, right? I think it's this deeper policy discussion that we've seen in some of the comments that you've had on the last 2 items, right? It's how we approach development. Even the conversation about the number of parking spaces, to me, it reflects a little bit of this view. Is it, look, let's set a standard to be pretty confident we're not going to have a situation that we don't create a problem, right, with the adjacent neighbors. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a perfectly valid position to take that cities and communities do all over the place. The other is a little bit more, well, I can never stop everything that's going to be problematic, and if I try to, I'm going to have regulation after regulation after regulation. At some point, you have to have a bit of faith that most of the time it works out pretty well, and we don't create a problem, right? And you've heard me talk about that when I talk about how we write these ordinances. If developers and whatnot can always find a way around ordinances, and so the question is, how much opening do you want to leave for folks to find a way around that? And if the answer is, I don't want to leave very much, which is perfectly valid, then what's going to happen is you're going to hang up folks that you weren't intending to with that tighter regulation. Does that make sense? And again, you may be perfectly fine with that, saying, look, that's kind of the price you pay a little bit, and it'll work itself out. But I don't want to have these things that are problematic, as opposed to, no, I want to hang up fewer people unintentionally, and that means there's a bigger loophole, if you will, for folks to come through with the ordinance. And so again, I think where staff has seen this has been these zoning cases that have come forward. It's been the SUP we've come forward. And as was kind of mentioned, if no property owners nearby show up, it's rare that we have a whole lot of debate or dialogue, right? What happens, and this is in every community, it's when it's nearby existing residents generally, but sometimes business owners, that have concerns about the potential change, how we approach that, right? And the philosophy, as I said, is, do we look at this zoning case of this change and say, look, why should I approve this thing unless it's clearly going to make our community better, move us in this direction we want to go? And if I'm not confident it's not going to do that, then just leave the zoning as is. Again, it's a perfectly valid position to take. Now, the flip side is to say, look, unless this zoning case clearly, demonstrably is going to create real harm and not just fears we throw out that aren't reasonable, then why should I not approve it? That's a valid position as well, right? And it shapes how we view it as city council. And part of that is a factor of other things. How we view growth and development. Is growth and development inherently in and of itself good? Or do we say, growth has good to it, but growth has bad to it as well, right? So there are additional places for people to live and shop and things like that. There are additional tax revenue. But there's additional demand for service. There's additional drainage and runoff. There's additional light, right? We had the night skies resolution earlier. And so there's good and bad to it. And we've heard council members in the past make the statement, well, people have a right to develop their property, comma. And then the question is, as they see fit, right? Or it's, people have a right to develop their property, comma, as is allowed under the zoning that council chooses to grant, right? They don't have the right to develop however they want. They have a right to develop how council allows it via zoning. But we've heard council members say it different things and sometimes leave off that after the comma part, right? That we're left to kind of go, okay, just broadly speaking. And again, nothing right or wrong. And so what this comes down to, again, I think from a staff perspective, is how we view those things. And really it's about whether we're able and whether we're willing to tell a particular developer no on a project. And not that this is a bad project. Often it's just not in the right location, right? And so we heard Sam talk about traffic through residential streets. We heard that a lot in Northcliffe, right? In Northcliffe, the redevelopment of the golf course, it was traffic through their neighborhood, as opposed to people saying, this is going to impact and increase traffic on FM 3009. We've heard that too. Well, FM 3009 has a lot of traffic, and it's getting a lot more traffic from way outside the boundaries of Schertz. This 1 3-acre piece isn't really going to make a significant difference. But I think that's really the issue that we're struggling with. And so the question is, and Emily will talk about this, do we want to use a PDD to kind of reduce standards to increase flexibility for a developer? Right, so the first time a developer comes in with this new district that Sam created but has a PDD attached to it and says, I want to drop it from 1.5 parking spaces to 1.4, and they can give you all the reasons why, are we okay doing that? Or do we come back and say, no, we set the standard at 1.5, and if we don't think that's right, then we'll revisit that fundamental parking standard per the ordinance, but I'm not going to adjust downward. I'm not going to reduce the standard with a PDD, right? Or do you look at this where they come in and they have it in location and the neighbors have concerns about that parking, and we say, you know, because of the neighbors' significant concerns about parking on their street, and maybe their streets coming in have median islands in them, like some of our older neighborhoods do. Because of that factor, only way I'm going to approve this zoning is we need to bump it up to 2 spaces because I'm less willing to take that chance, right? Perfectly valid reason to do it. But I think it's that philosophical approach that really is about how we use PDDs. And so to me, again, the issue is not the technical of PDDs. It's how much do we want to try to approve this development? And is a PDD a way to soften it, do it, or reduce standards to make it viable for the developer, versus how much do we say, that project is not the right fit here. Does that make sense? And that seems to be what we have. Because let me come back. I don't know that I can ever recall a time where we've had a request to increase the number of units or decrease the lot size, and there's been a neighborhood next to it where that neighborhood has said, oh yeah, we're in support of doing that, right? And here's the flip side is, unless there's some use on the other side of it that causes that not to be viable, then the policy question for council is, why would we reduce it, right? If that current zoning is R2, 8,400 square foot lots, why would we reduce it? There's no reason that can't develop that way. It's just we happen to have a developer who says, oh, but I want to do R6 or I want to do R7. And so all of those things that the residents talk about, it'll add more traffic. It will add more traffic. It makes it denser, right? Less elbow room, less open space. They're right? It adds more kids to the schools, right? Whether it's overcrowded or not. It probably has more paving on the ground, so you get more runoff, more detention. So why would we ever approve that? What's the policy reason to do that? Unless you can say, I don't want that bigger lot there. But again, that goes back to how I started this versus what's our philosophy on it. Because in many cases, the world doesn't fall apart if you approved a rezone with smaller lots and it went and developed. We survived the increased traffic. We survived the greater density. We survived the less elbow room, right? We survived the additional runoff. The schools survived the additional kids. It's that policy question. And that, to me, is really the crux of what the issue is that I think we're struggling with. And I think we're focusing on the PDD as a way to do it, right? And so if you look at when this request came up, it was really this decision of you had adjacent property owners saying, I don't think that's positive for us. And if the view of council is a rezone needs to improve things, then you would say, I'm not going to approve this straight zoning. I might consider it if you can change your request or be more specific and show that you are in fact improving things. So we're not adding traffic down a street those residential homes use. So we can guarantee greater setbacks from those properties, right? So that we can say, yeah, I know it's not likely you're going to come in and do 950 units, but I want to make sure you don't do 950 units. I want to cap you at 300 units or whatever the case may be, right? That would be a reason to do it. But again, that is a philosophy on the part of council saying, I'm not going to approve this zoning unless demonstrably it's going to make our community better and we're going to offset those negative consequences, right? And when I say those negative consequences, what I really mean are those ones that we all would say, yeah, that's a valid concern that we've seen bear itself out, right? What I don't have as much concern with are the people that come in, and I can appreciate the fear, but it's these fears that aren't backed up by data. Well, when this develops, there's going to be crime. Again, I can look to the police chief, he was here. You don't get a lot of crime happening in the middle of an area where there isn't anyone. Whenever you bring people together, that's where you get crime, right? We have crime in single-family neighborhoods. It's all the kind of development and things like that go with it. So with that, I'll be quiet, and Emily certainly can start, but I think really the issue is us getting some direction from council about what we want and what we don't want to be. And I'll touch on one last thing. Your point about that tiny home subdivision, it wasn't clear to me that there aren't members of this council who would say, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing to get here. Not that that has to be everywhere, right? And not to say that we don't want to make sure our streets are wide enough, but to get a neighborhood that's maybe 10 acres of tiny homes and provides, you know, some different, that may not be a bad thing. Wasn't clear to me. So with that, I'll stop talking and see if y'all want to talk or you want Emily just to go through her presentation on PDDs. Okay.
You've been warned.
But yeah.
Okay, Brian's hyped this up a whole lot, so I'm warning you now, it is thorough, it is lengthy. I will try to move quickly through it. So a planned development district ultimately is created to promote and encourage innovative development that is sensitive to the surrounding land uses. That is what the UDC says. If this necessitates varying from available zoning districts, so if there's not a straight zoning district that will meet those needs, the proposed development should demonstrate community benefits, should not be used to deviate from the provisions of the UDC that contradict its intent. That is what a PDD is supposed to be at its core. So we do have some minimum PDD sizes. So if it's a straight single-family residential, it has to be a minimum of 2 acres. Same thing with multifamily and a non-residential. However, if it's a mixed residential and non-residential, then it has to be at least 5 acres to even request a PDD. When we look at the development standards that are set forth in the ordinance granting the PDD, right? They come in, they request a PDD, and it's supposed to have this ordinance document that identifies the changes that they may be requesting. It shall include but not be limited to uses, density, lot area, width and depth, yard depths and widths, building height, elevations and floor area ratio, parking and access, screening and landscaping, accessory buildings, signs, lighting and management associations, and other requirements as the city council may deem appropriate. So within the UDC, we are telling developers that they can request in a PDD to make modifications to any of these items. So lot area, width, depth, I know that's a big one. We are telling developers they can request that. So within the ordinance, there is a design standards document. Some of these are very lengthy. You think the Crossvine design standards, it's in like a 3-inch thick binder at this point, versus some of our smaller single-family PDDs, maybe a couple of pages. Those design standards, it's a list of all the requested variances from the standard requirements, typically in the form of a written narrative. It should include the UDC section, what's being requested, what's being modified. So I know we've been through criteria for approval tonight, so I'm not going to bore you with all of this, but we do use the criteria for approval from the UDC when we look at PDDs. PDD amendments can happen from the UDC as well. A minor amendment can be made to the conceptual plan that's part of the ordinance, including corrections in spelling, distances, building position or layout, changes in parking. If the proposed amendment change or impact the nature or purposes of the approved PDD, the request may be denied. I'll also say that most of the PDD design standards that staff brings forward on behalf of developers has a section at the end that identifies what's a minor amendment, and that may be approved by city manager, his or her designee, or a major amendment that would require it to come back through city council. So going through some kind of history, on residential PDDs, Ordinance 09S06 amended the UDC and created the Planned Development District section. Prior to that ordinance, they were Planned Unit Developments, or PUD. Ordinance 10S29, which was adopted in 2010, stipulated that no applications for zone changes to R6 or R7 could be accepted, considered, or approved. Keep in mind that ordinance is no longer in effect, and R6 and R7 can now be requested with limited acreage. After the adoption of the 10S29 ordinance, PDDs became more prevalent. If someone wanted to submit a zoning for lots smaller than the R2, which is a 70 by 120, really their only option was to request a PDD as that alternative. The PDD process would allow developers to submit for a zone change with modifications to the lot width and depth, and would create a project with varying lot dimensions, some smaller and some larger. So some examples. Obviously, well-known Crossvine, they have modifications in their PDD for lot size, screening, commercial requirements, fencing, landscaping. Parklands and Parklands 2, which was done in 2013 and 2019, made modifications to signs, lot size, exterior building material, landscaping, fencing, and screening. Saddlebrook in 2021, again, reduced lot size, increased sign size, increased impervious coverage. Heritage Oaks in 2021, lot size, modifications, coving plan, block length, landscaping changes, tree preservation and mitigation requirements were reduced. Carmel Ranch in 2021, again, decreased lot size, increased impervious coverage, and increased sign size. So here's some pictures. If you're not familiar, that's Heritage Oaks to the left and Crossvine to the right. Carmel Ranch off of Lower Seguin Road. Homestead off of 35. Sterling Grove, which was proposed off of Trainer Hill Road. In the majority of the residential PDDs the city has been receiving for many years, the developers are requesting variances or deviations from the UDC in order to gain approval for smaller lots, reduce setbacks, increase signage. In other words, requesting a PDD in order to get more house on the lot and modify the code to meet their desires and goals. Most residential PDDs are being used in order to benefit the developer, deviate standards, and not necessarily benefit the city, which is, from the beginning, the intended goal of a PDD. There are some residential PDDs within the city that are unique and different, so I don't want to stifle that there are PDDs that have been approved in the city that truly created a unique, different development than what would have been possible with the UDC. So based on the P&Z and City Council Subcommittee recommendations, Ordinance 23S07 was adopted in March of 2023, which eliminated the prohibition on R6 or R7, so those can now be requested. Keep in mind, when that ordinance went into effect, there were stipulations on how large those could be. R6 is capped at 30 acres and R7 capped at 40 acres. Since PDDs have mainly been utilized to deviate from the UDC lot size requirements with R6 and R7 now available for residential, are PDDs still necessary? Are they still desired? That's the question that staff is being faced with and is being questioned by developers as well. So it's really a policy question. If we as a city are okay with deviating standards in a PDD, should the UDC be amended to change the standards for everyone? If we continuously approve PDDs with smaller lot sizes, increased impervious coverage, smaller setbacks, should everybody utilizing a straight zoning district be able to reap those benefits as well? Several of the PDDs that I've mentioned have significantly increased signage. Homestead, Carmel Ranch, Saddlebrook, all of them have significantly larger signage than what would, straight from the UDC be permitted. If we are okay with larger signage for residential, Should we make that change across the board and not require someone to submit for a PDD to get larger signage? So we do have some commercial PDDs. It's not just utilized for residential. We do typically receive more residential PDDs than commercial. We have received more recently that are commercial and residential mixed. But we do have a couple of just straight commercial. Some examples, so the Verde Enterprise Business Park, it was adopted in 2007. It is one of our, I think, more unique PDDs in that it explicitly stipulates the use of the 1996 UDC. So when someone comes in to develop something in the Verde Enterprise Business Park, we pull out the old 1996 UDC, and those are the standards that they are actually utilizing. That's why that part of the city looks a little different than the rest of the city. IDV, approved in 2021, allowed additional permitted uses, had differing outdoor storage requirements and landscape requirements. They actually increased the diameter at breast height of their minimum tree size. Weiderstein Ranch, better known as Evo, that was in 2018. They had increased signage, and at that time we were still able to require differing building materials, so they made a modification to that. And then Garden Ridge Commercial in 2019, they had additional permitted uses added and then increased landscaping for that property as well. So as I mentioned, we do have some mixed commercial, residential, and multifamily PDDs. These are more recent, so FM 1518 Apartments, again in 2022, they had a differing parking ratio, so they decreased the parking requirements, decreased screening and fencing, eliminated the requirement for wheel stops, changed the parking space size, had larger signage. Schertz Station in 2022 had differing landscaping requirements. The architectural elevations differ from what the UDC requires. They have those mixed use, and then again, they changed the parking ratios as well. So that is the site plan for the 1518 Apartments, Schertz Station, IDV, Schertz Gateway, which has been mentioned a couple times tonight in the R4, R5 presentation. So they are proposing commercial up front with the multifamily townhomes in the rear. In the majority of the commercial PDDs, the developers are requesting variances or deviations so that their desired development is allowed. So again, they're proposing these changes to ensure that exactly what they want to get built is what's being built, not necessarily making modifications to their site and their plans to fit the goals and objectives and the design requirements from the UDC. Most commercial developments include deviations to screening and buffering, typically reducing those. Landscape requirements, again, reducing the required landscape setbacks, required number of trees, increased signage, so that could be additional signage or larger signage, allowing additional land uses by right, and making modifications to the parking ratios and standard dimensions. I will caveat the standard dimensions. Those were typically all requested prior to the UDC being modified to reduce to the 9x18. That is what was being requested in the PDDs rather than the 10x20, which was the UDC standard at the time. So again, policy question. If we as a city are okay with deviating standards in a PDD, should we just amend the UDC and make sure that any commercial development that wants to come in can reap those same benefits? Similar question to the residential. If we're okay with larger signage or increased signage, should every commercial developer that maybe doesn't need to come in for a zone change, doesn't need to come in for a PDD, their zoning district that's already established allows their development, they can have larger signage as well. Several of the commercial PDDs have requested and been granted approval for additional land uses. Should the UDC permitted use table be reviewed and modified to allow additional land uses? If we're continuously approving PDDs that allow land uses by right in general business just because they're part of a PDD, are we acceptable to have those same land uses on a straight general business zone property? So several of the commercial PDDs have been granted approval for decreased landscaping. I will say, we just recently went through a large modification to the landscaping section in the UDC. So you kind of take that with a grain of salt. Most of the PDDs that were approved that significantly reduced landscaping would have had different design requirements based on the new UDC requirement anyway. So here is a table that I can't take credit for. Sam put a lot of work into this, looking at the different UDC analysis versus the PDDs. So the D is a decrease in standard versus the I is an increase in standard. So if you look at Halley's Cove, the dimensional and design standard, so that's your lot width and depth, your building setbacks, it's a decrease. Same thing for Saddlebrook, Carmel Ranch, Sterling Grove, the 1518 apartments, Schertz Station, Schertz Gateway, all of them had a decrease in the UDC requirement for lot width and depth, if that makes sense. Looking at the next one, general outdoor storage. So right, that's not really applicable to the residential side, but for IDV, there was an increase in standards for outdoor storage. So I don't want to bore you going through all of these, but I'm happy to answer any questions on these. When you look at signs, we looked at a decrease as in they're getting additional signage than what we would allow currently. So I know that one's a little confusing. So kind of the options, the discussion. Restrict what development standards, site design standards can be modified. If we don't want developers to come in and request changes to lot size, setback, landscaping, signage, then it should be clear in the UDC that those are not items that can be requested to be changed. Clearly identify community benefits design standards that exceed minimum UDC requirements in order to allow a variance to other UDC requirements. Example, if we want to require increased landscaping in conjunction with decreased lot width or smaller roads, or increased sidewalks for pedestrian amenities, right? It's that give and a take. It would be easier for staff, the developer, to have clear guidance on if you want to request a decreased lot width, then you need to provide X, Y, and Z in order for staff to evaluate your PDD request. Burden is on the applicant to provide justification on why the PDD is a superior development that could not have been done with conventional zoning. So I think this is a big one, that the developer is required to state why is a straight zoning case not applicable? What additional design requirements, what are they doing that's going above and beyond what could be developed with just the straight zoning that's there or a straight zoning that's being requested? We could get rid of PDDs and only utilize straight zoning. That is an option. You don't have to have planned development districts as an option. That's the presentation. Brian, I don't know if you want to.
Well, before we get started, you brought up two different types of PDDs, commercial and residential. I think we need to address them differently. And I think the easiest one is commercial. So with that, let's address commercial. What are your thoughts on the PDD for commercial? We'll start with that, okay? Councilmember Westbrook?
Mine was about residential. I'll talk to it later.
Okay. Councilmember Macaluso?
In terms of the commercial, I think if it seems like signage is one of the biggest requests. Is that what you notated as being?
So I would say for the commercial, much as, I'm trying to figure out how to tactfully say this, we run into the same items on commercial and residential. Whether it's a commercial development or residential development, they're requesting changes to the lot width and depth, they're requesting changes to setbacks, they're requesting changes to landscaping, to signage. So even though the land use is completely different, most of them are requesting changes to the same sections in the UDC and the same design standards.
Yeah, and uses, the breadth of uses being allowed, right? I mean, to be blunt, it's to allow things that the zoning currently doesn't allow because they feel it makes it a more viable project for them, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it's this issue of then why not let sort of everybody do it? Why not change the code, I think?
But it is different. I mean, when you look commercial and you're trying to put landscaping, these are manufacturers, these are job producing commercial signage, sales tax, all that is being considered. Where residential, you're looking at someone that's going to water their grass, so landscaping is not as important when you're looking at commercial to a residential. When when you have two buildings that are right next to each other, and you're requesting the landscaping buffer between two of them, you actually have right next to each other landscaping. So it is different.
So,
It is
so the mayor,
different.
what we would say is, so let me offer that, and I take this the right way. If we're indifferent to the amount of landscape between commercial developments, then we can come up here next week and we will have a sample ordinance that eliminates the requirement for landscaping between commercial developments. And so when you think on Schertz Parkway, where we have commercial developments next to one another, the office project, all of that landscape between them will go away. And it'll be paving and more building. We can do that. And I mean this sincerely to have you think
but
about it, right?
I'm not saying that to do away with it. I think that we need to allow more flexibility because you can't have trees right next to each other. You increase the distance between trees so that when the next commercial enterprise comes in, they plant the tree in between those. So we have we have the standard being met by two individuals and not the standard being met for both of them at the same time.
Sure. So what we could do, and this is, we could say, either property owner has to provide the landscaping, and we could make it the second property owner in. Now, likely, what staff would hear is, why didn't you make him do it? Well, because we wrote the ordinance to say it the second guy in. And so if you're the second guy in, you simply have to do it. Now, what we could do too is we could cut the standard in half, right, and have each of them do half. It's all about what you want the standard to be. And I think this is where staff says, if you feel like we have more landscaping between commercial developments than we need, then we can amend the code and we can reduce that amount of landscaping between commercial developments. That's what staff would advocate. If we say, look, we're always okay with this, if we want to increase the signage allowed by 50%, double it, we can again come forward next week with a sign ordinance change that doubles the amount of signage for commercial development. Happy to do that. But again, what I would offer is, when you have a case like the SUP we have for the gas station, one of the things that development would be allowed to do by right is twice as much signage as they would currently be allowed. Now again, you may say, well, that's fine. I would bet that you would start hearing residents say, my guy, you got this huge sign, right? That's the drawback. There's not a right or wrong. I think what staff would say, though, is if the logic of the PDD for commercial is this stuff is fine, then let's amend the code. And that way the rules are clear for everybody, because what we're saying is our current standards are higher than they need to be. That's all we're advocating for.
No,
Yes,
I
Mr.
think at its
Williams.
core, the staff is looking for that clear direction.
The
to move
direction,
forward.
yeah.
And a clear standard. We know there are exceptions, but if there's a consensus to say lower standards for landscaping, then we would bring it back at a lower standard. I guess the question the council would have to ask itself is, what is the character of the community do we want to have?
Right.
And what type standard do we want to maintain? That's for y'all to decide as the policymakers.
Can I
Go
finish,
ahead, I
Professor?
interrupted
So-
you.
yeah, it's
I'm
okay.
sorry,
So
Councilmember.
I understand that you're trying to separate the two, but I think it is hard, and I do think it's going to be hard to try to get a consensus among all of us. I think that we all have different ideas and opinions, and, you know, landscaping to me is important because I do care about the aesthetics and how our community looks, and I think, and so, you know, obviously the PDDs, I've been on both sides of it, and I know I've caused confusion to the staff and probably to the other council members, and it's because I've been stuck on that idea of the different, the innovative, you know, the benefit to the city. And I think the first one that I was a part of was the Schertz Gateway. I thought it was appropriate for that because it was something different, innovative for our community, and so I was in favor of it. But the ones that came in after that were all with the intent of skirting the standards that we have set. And that's where I have a problem with it, because I do think we have some special things about the city that I don't think we should just give up on them. You know, and I think there's standards that we should have in place, because there are things that the people like about the community, the way some of the neighborhoods are built, the space between the houses, a lot of things that people really appreciate. And I don't see it as being a benefit when somebody comes in, well, I want to do smaller houses, less landscaping, I want to do this, that. Everything that we like is completely different from what their proposal is. So that's where I run into the issues with it, is losing that thought that this is an innovative project that's going to benefit our community. Now I'm looking at it as, well, it's just losing some of our standards that we've had in place and what has made Schertz what it is. So that's my...
Councilmember Brown.
I thoroughly agree with Councilman Macaluso as far as, maintaining standards. But at the end of the day, it depends. I mean, just like signage in Verde Business Park, for big buildings, bigger signs make sense versus retail centers on FM 1518. So it depends. So we need to, find whatever that standard is. And if we continue to have deviations from through a PDD process, well, we just have to be very careful to not, let the developers walk all over the city, if you will. But I think it's almost impossible to sit there and go through everything that we just discussed tonight. And there's a lot more. These are just kind of surface items, if you will, and try to put this one will go here, this one will go there, this one has to stay here. Again, the PDD process gives us the flexibility to work with some of these people. And again, I think we collectively have to stick around with that, the innovative design versus I want to make more money design. And, I'm all about capitalism, this is America, and, private property rights and whatnot, but just like you said earlier, the individual's right to develop in accordance with the city's guidelines, not, I'm just going to put whatever apartment here, or I'm going to put my factory over here, and I don't care what you say. That is not effective use of private property rights. But at the same time, we want to be able to let the people that have, changed, the use of the land has changed over the years as the people retire and move out, and we can't hold them hostage either. There's something inherently wrong with that. But if we don't keep the flexibility of a PDD, I think we're just kind of shutting ourselves down. But what do we change? I don't know, because it depends. What are they coming in on? Is it a large multi-use one like Crossvine's got a combination of commercial and residential in there? Most of them don't put those into their master plan, where they did. Correct, most of them are just residential or just commercial. But still, it's a whole lot different IDV over on I-35 versus, gas station on 1518. Both commercial, but totally different projects in totally different areas. So, again, the standards, I think we need to collectively agree on, and maybe that's a larger discussion area that we could have sometime. But as far as trying to tell you here and now what to work on, I don't think anybody wants less landscaping. I don't think anybody wants, bigger signs or anything else. But at the same time, it depends. If the project makes sense like that, it's a tough one.
Yeah, and I think Tim and I are mostly on the same path, because, just as you mentioned, the small businesses off of Schertz Parkway, you don't want a 20 by 30 foot sign right off of the road there. But obviously, if it's an industrial area or if it's in a different area, yeah, that makes sense. And it's not gonna, it's not gonna be an issue in terms of the view that you have. So I don't see how you can get away with that unless you changed it to possible, industrial-only signs can be this side, and
And we kind of do have that, just to touch on that point, right? One of the things that staff has been doing is running through these ordinance changes. So we have, in the last 5 years, amended the signage generally for bigger buildings, sort of those industrials, to do bigger signs on the building, right? If you're on 35, you get more signage than if you're on a lesser street, right? That's what our code currently does. And so I think, again, staff's position is if we have these things like the philosophical signage in industrial parks, bigger buildings on 35 can be bigger, then let's amend the code to allow for that rather than to sort of case by case do it with the PDD. If that
Is there a way that you can do that?
Sure.
Okay.
There is, and we've kind of done that, right? We've got, and let me say this, one of the things that we've done over the last few years is we've really gone through and modified some of our standards. And in some ways, maybe the way I describe it is we've right-sized those.
Yeah, because
right?
I remember when
and so that they're
Amazon
more
came in.
appropriate and we're not getting as many complaints. But I will tell you, I think the fundamental thing that staff faces, and those who are on that committee that we talked about that, we had that example of if we say you've got a 20-foot landscape buffer, and the hypothetical was, well, if some guy comes in and he's got 19 feet 6 inches, you guys would be okay with that, right, staff? And we would go, well, if we're okay with that, I'm okay with 19, and then I'm okay with 18, and if I'm okay with 18, I'm okay with 17. Right? And it chips and chips, right? I mean, at what point do you look up and go, why is staff coming in recommending 10 feet? Right? Because we've chipped away at it. At some point, and Dan will chime in, you have to have a consistency of application of these standards as opposed to it being arbitrary and capricious and you're just doing things a little bit willy-nilly. And that's where the standard, when it's 20 feet, it's sort of 20 feet, and the person who's looking to buy that piece of property on the front end just needs to know, I've got to account for a 20-foot landscape buffer, right? As opposed to, I'm going to be blunt, sometimes what we hear is, oh, we didn't bother to look at your standard. We laid this thing out, and that's what we want. And now you need to modify your standards to fit what we want. I mean, we literally have heard that. And that goes back to what kind of community do you want to sort of be? And there are outlets for this stuff. I want to offer that. You can go to Board of Adjustment. And if you can make that case of a particular thing, then have at it. But that's a pretty high bar, not simply, it just doesn't kind of work for me.
Yeah, Mayor, if I can offer
Yes,
one comment on
go ahead.
the signs. So an example with the signs on, say, I-35. There's a difference between, say, somebody who's down in a subgrade area and they want to maybe exceed the sign height to be reasonably close it would be if they were at grade or close to it. I mean, you could maybe make an argument for that. Versus, I want to build this right next to everybody else, and I just want my sign to be higher.
Sure.
We've had that request, that I just want a bigger and higher sign than everybody else has. Yeah. And that's where staff gets in a bind. We get in a bind because we say that our standard is this. And I think they have to make their case, right? To B of A, BOA to...
I mean, that would be where it is, but it's, again, a pretty high standard. And again, staff has no problem if we say, look, we're too restrictive on signage, let's amend the code, right? And that's not to go crazy, but again, I think if you look at most of what we've had kind of come in, it's hard to argue it's making it better for the community. It may be making the project more viable, right? And so having the project versus not having it, we may say is better for the community. That would be the logic of it.
Okay, so if you're on 3009, is there a amount of, has it changed in the last 2 years that one sign is only allowed? Did y'all change that? Because I'm not up to date with that. Like if you have the building and you're going on 3009, is it just one sign that they're able to place on the building, including the marker?
No, we made modifications to
I don't
that.
know if it's actually been changed, though.
Yeah, so for wall signage, depending on your roadway classification, you might be able to get a larger sign, but you're allowed 3 wall signs, but it's 1 sign per building face, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we did tweak and the committee may remember this from our project on 3009, where, yeah, part of the challenge on the code is if you've got a 10-acre tract of land versus you've got a half-acre tract, it doesn't necessarily make sense that the 10-acre tract can't have more signage. And I think we tackled that to try to deal. And let me be clear, that's what staff would say we should do. If we have these problems, let's look at the code and make a code amendment. But what we don't want to do is just piecemeal it for everybody kind of thing.
Councilmember Hayward.
So I was going to say, being on the subcommittee and coming up with those things, I remember the issue, and they had to go to BOA, was Murdoch's and the MSI, right? Because they wanted them bigger because of their location off of 35. And then Murdoch's because they wanted the round sign and it didn't meet the specifications.
They wanted more signage
Sign.
than the way our code laid it out.
Okay. So, and we had that discussion on signs, and I remember that. So is there a way to say, if you are in this location, you can get this? I mean, because I'm trying to find a way to give you direct, because
let me say this, we can write the sign code to be very, and I'm going to say this, to be very particular to the situation, right? It's going to make it trickier.
Okay.
Trickier is more complicated, so you got to weigh the benefit of, hey, it's more nuanced, versus now it's trickier, it's more confusing. You get people going, I thought I could do this. Well, that's a different scenario, different section, right? My point is, we can change the UDC as much as we work on that, and as tricky as we make it, and as nuanced as we make it. I bet you dollars to donuts
somebody's going to want something else.
That we will still have people walk in and say, right? Because it's that, here's the landscape buffer is 20 feet. I want to do 19.6. Well, you let that guy do 19.6. I want to do 19.4.
Right.
Well, I want to do 18.11, right? I mean, it's that you will always have that as much as we try to work on ordinances. And that fundamentally is the thing that is at the crux of the issue, right? And it's a policy question. I'm going to go back. Is your answer, what is the big deal? Yeah, it doesn't really hurt a whole lot to let them reduce the standards. Versus, is your view of it, look, we set the bar that we want Schertz to be like this. We want Schertz to be Schertz. We don't want Schertz to be like, and then I won't name the community, right?
Houston.
Now that, come on, wasn't naming the, this is coming from TML president. Can't say
well,
that anymore.
because Senator
right? I mean, everybody's
knows.
different,
yes.
but that's really what it comes down to. Is why are we doing these things? Because staff gets hit. I mean, what percentage of requests would you say they're wanting some exception to the rule that come in?
Council,
Now that walk in the door with you guys.
Every project. I
Right.
would say every project comes in and doesn't want to do a 20-foot landscape buffer, doesn't want to do the required number of parking spaces. Most of those, staff handles and we work through during the site plan process.
But let me say what that means. What that means is staff saying, no, you have to do this. We're not going to support you. Da-da-da-da-da. Putting our foot down. And then you guys hear staff is difficult. Staff is mean. God, they're nasty people in staff, right? But understand that's our world. Literally everybody walks in.
So if we're setting the standard, council is setting the standard, then when somebody calls us and says staff is difficult, then our response should be staff is doing what we have set policy for, and we're not changing it because we don't need to keep lowering our standards for every little situation.
Let me say this. It's fair to ask, how is staff being difficult, right?
Well,
that's
right.
fair to ask. And I mean that sincerely, right? Because if their answer is staff has taken too long, that's a different thing. But if they're like, we want to do this reduction in standard.
Right. And we go, no, it's not, staff isn't being difficult
Right.
because we're setting
That's
the policy.
the standard we sort of set.
And being on that panel and getting ready for that panel and realizing the different things and why cities are the way they are. Every city is different because of the residents that live there and the councils that are hearing from the residents to be a certain way. Schertz wants to be Schertz the way we see it. We're trying to be I don't know, we have the standard of we want the parking spots, we want the landscaping, we want things to look nice. We're not trying to have those big, huge signs off of I-35 that some neighborhoods to the north have, and I won't name them. And in doing that deeper dive, it's like we set the standard and we have to live with that no matter what it is. And if people don't want to come and develop in our city because we have set a standard, then they can move on down the road. But as far as the PDDs, I think it depends because every property is going to be kind of different. And maybe the straight zoning doesn't always work. Or like they brought in Heritage Oaks, that was different. They didn't want to do the 1960 zoning. So how do we get what we want in straight zoning? Because typically in straight zoning, like the one we just did with the R2 and R6, they're across the street from each other. How do you do straight zoning with the R6 and R2 intermingled? Would that be the way we set it up, or is that a PDD?
Yeah, and so let me offer this up. I think that you have a way to do straight zoning, right, to mix those uses. There's also something to be said where somebody walks in and says, look, just to make it more clear where the R6 is, where the R7 is, where the R2 is, right, I want to do a PDD to lay that out. And council says, that's helpful because I want to make sure residents can clearly see that bigger lots are going to be next to them. Then to some degree I would say that is sort of a neutral PDD, but that's intended to make it better, right? That's intended to make it better. But when they walk in and say, oh, but by the way, we want to increase the lot coverage, right? That's where Emily had that slide. If you go back up to where they have those sort of trade-offs, the next one down, right? It's the, you know, they're going up on some standards and they're going down on the other. A lot of times where they're going up on the standard, it's not really going up, right? They're just using it to justify why they want to decrease the standard in someplace else. And so again, philosophically, you can use a PDD for those reasons. So again, the apartment case that we had come in, you could do a PDD to say, look, generally I'm okay with apartments there, but I want to mitigate some of the potential negatives on this. I want to keep them off that particular access drive. I want to cap the number of units, right? It's just too many there. Even though that's probably unreasonable, let's cap the units. I want to increase the setback from the adjacent property. And so I would be willing to do a PDD to increase the standard, to take this thing and make it better, right? Let me give you the flip though. It's the project tract of land that's zoned R2, single family residential large lot. It's got single family residential around it. There's nothing on the sort of other side to cause that to be wrong with R2. Why would you're gonna have a crowd of residents all showing up, because we've seen it saying, don't reduce the lot size, don't increase the number of lots. What's the philosophy on changing that, right? There's nothing wrong with the zoning today. It's preferable to the residents. It's less traffic, it's more elbow room. This just developer wants to do smaller lots to get 20% more lots in or 30% more lots. That's the philosophical approach underpinning of it. And nothing you can do with a PDD is really going to offset that stuff, right? It's a little bit of lipstick on a pig.
So then are you just saying we just go with,
I'm
asking for direction from council.
That's what staff is looking for.
I know that's what you're looking for. So are you kind of looking for us to say we want just straight zoning and let's change some things? Or are you okay with saying, like Councilmember Brown said, it depends?
It's staff is trying to understand council's philosophical approach. Like I will say this, when I first started here, I clearly remember people on council saying, and meaning it sincerely, this is the standard we set in Schertz. If you're not going to meet this standard, then you should go to a different community, right? And they meant that sincerely and happy to have that project walk out the door. Now, there are implications to that, and so things ebb and flow over time. And so it's fair to say, have we gone too far with that? and we're not having enough happen. And so I would say that up until maybe 2 years ago, year and a half or so ago, we went through a spell where generally the view was, is this really a problem? Why are we being so hard, right? And we've kind of started to come back. This is me being really honest with you in terms of, you know, unless it's making the community better, unless it's really improving the standards, we don't need to be approving these rezones, and we don't need to be doing a bunch of PDDs to reduce the setbacks and the lot coverage and the impervious, right? And if we need to right-size our code, let's right-size our code, but we still want to be Schertz about it, not whatever unnamed city. Is that?
Yeah. Councilmember Westbrook.
I won't.
All right, so I'm trying to rectify everything in my mind. So what I'm hearing is nobody wants to reduce standards. That's straight zoning. But they still want some flexibility in terms of PDD. And so now what we're talking about, PDD should be used sparingly. And based upon this, this slide here is, what is the common denominator? When using a PDD, what's the common denominator price? What's the price? What are we willing to reduce standards?
And are you willing to use a PDD to reduce standards? Or are you only willing to use a PDD to say, look, I want to make this project better, so I'm going to increase standards with PDD, unless it's really a unique project?
Yeah, but, yes, but if you go back to the slide, go back to the development, the colored slide. See a bunch of Ds there.
Mm-hmm.
So the price is, what do we get for the price for those Ds? Better landscaping? What's our price? What has historically been the common denominator? What's been the price to get those Ds? Is it just better landscaping?
No, I think it's varied over time, right? So I think what's happened is what we've done is varied, right? So with Crossvine, we got a whole lot more landscape and open space. We locked in a fairly unique development. For Heritage Oaks, we got a very different development off Wiederstein Church Parkway than really we see anywhere. I mean, to me, you can clearly say we're getting something different, better, that stands out in our community, right? The others, I'm not sure we get a whole lot different.
But see, that's what I'm talking about. If nobody understands the price and it just fluctuates, it just goes up and down,
Well,
the D will always.
but this is a 3-year window. This is the last 3 years. The ones you referenced are outside of that window.
That's right.
So referencing back to Brian's notice of a change over time.
What is the current council's price for getting a D in our community? That's what it boils down to. That's the question.
So these were developments in South Schertz, and we were trying to encourage development in South Schertz. So I think that's why Saddlebrook, Haley's Cove, Carmel Ranch, and Sterling Grove got approval with the PDDs, because we were trying to get development down there after Crossvines being a TERS. That would be
And again,
what I remember us as council
I'm
trying
not
to
being
get
critical,
something.
and so again, that's that philosophical, right where I started. If we want to have more development happen, then we're willing to make these adjustments to make that development happen.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this from a different way. I certainly don't want to lower our standards. We have our standards, and I think we need to maintain our standards as the baseline. Straight zoning is certainly an option. You know, we have a comp plan that we laid out for the city. We said this area is going to be commercial, this area is going to be residential. And when the planets align perfectly, you have a parcel of land that someone says, I want to do R2 on, and they can meet all the standards, it's done.
Yep.
Somebody else looks at it and says, well, I'd rather do R6. I can do R6 on this thing, meet all the standards, we're done. To me, the difference is every parcel is unique, okay? One developer may look at a parcel and say, it's R6, and I can meet all the standards, here's my plan, have a nice day. But that's, you know, you've got drainage issues, you've got all the kinds of issues. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with a developer looking at a parcel of land and saying, here's my take on it. I mean, if they want to come in with a proposed PDD and explain to the staff and council on why they want to deviate to some degree, whether it's a mixture of zoning, whether it's a height variance, whether it's a density variance, if they want to ask the question, I don't have a problem with that, because to me, it really depends on the site they're talking about. If they can make a good case and explain why I can't do 2 spots per lot and I want to do 1.75, and I understand the concern. You know, one guy asked for 1.75, one guy's going to ask for 1.5. Someone's going to come in and say, I want 1 spot. I get that. At the end of the day, I don't have a problem with that. I'd rather say, okay, what are you proposing, and make that decision on how does that benefit the community. You may be proposing something that does not meet our UDC, and because of that specific unique location, you know, we got a 20-foot landscaping buffer. Well, if the standard is a 20-foot landscaping buffer around the entire property, but there's one area next to it that's commercial that, you know, you can't get a full 20 foot, are you going to turn around and say no to a good development because it's got a 20-foot landscaping buffer everywhere except for, you know?
So if I may, let me ask this, because I hear you, and I think if I look to Emily, I can guarantee what her answer is. 99% of the time, the reason they can't do that is they simply want to build more on that property than our codes allow them to build.
Well, you know,
I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that, but again, I think our staff is talented enough to sit there and say, well, what you're proposing in that reduced setback is so that you could increase the density, and they can sit there and say, that's just not going to fly. I mean, but you know, you look at dimensions and designs, you look at landscaping stuff, screening and fencing, parking. Again, to me, a lot of these things are site specific. So do you turn around and do we have a piece of property now in the city of Schertz that never develops because none of our baseline zoning sort of fits well on that parcel?
So if I appreciate that, and so if I may, let me sort of ask this, or let me sort of say this. So give me an example of what the basis for reducing the landscape buffer on one side would be.
It could be, from my perspective, the adjacent development. For example, if you were putting in a residential lot and next to it is some kind of commercial spot, if you've got a fence, if we have a fence requirement in there, do we really need to have a full 20-foot buffer? I mean, that to me, that may be something that might be a viable option.
On the commercial. So the commercial has that 20-foot landscape buffer next to res. And so in this case, the developer walks in and says, look, I don't want to put in a 20-foot landscape buffer adjacent to the residential. And again, help me understand, what would the reason be?
I think it's based on the site constraints myself. Like I said, to me, each parcel is unique.
Yep.
So without, you know, I have a hard time just saying, let's take this zoning and just throw it on this parcel and everything's going to line up.
Right.
I would think that on any parcel of land, you're going to have some kind of design or construction constraints.
Yep.
Whether that's based on drainage, whether that's based on access points or egress points.
I would agree with you. Every site is unique and has its own specific issues. Agree with you entirely.
You know, so to me, to sit there and say, well, it's either baseline zoning,
right,
figure it out. I don't mind some flexibility. You know, where do you draw the line at? I guess that's hard for me. It's hard to say. I'd have to look at, well, what are you proposing and why?
Okay. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I think this is the challenge, right? You get a developer who walks in and says, look, this is my project. For this thing to work, I need to put a 5,000 square foot office building there. And I can show you these factors that I've got that cause me not to be able to put that 5,000 square foot office building on and meet your standards. And so I want to reduce this particular standard, or I'll do this one, 6 of one, half dozen the other, so I can make my project work. There's nothing wrong with that, right? This goes back to what's the philosophy is, are we willing to say no to that? Or again, is that a valid reason? Because again, I'll come back, literally almost everybody walks in the door with that, right? And that I think is the challenge for staff is how we approach this.
Mayor, well, let me recognize Councilmember Hayward. Okay, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Westbrook.
Okay, so based upon the theory right here, most of the Ds are in the, what does DIM stand for?
Dimension.
Dimensions and design. All right, so what about if we eliminated some of the categories, right? In order to narrow it down for your staff. Keep dimensions and design, because that's where most of the Ds are coming from. Keep parking, that seems to be a consistent theme for some of the council members. I don't know what the additional design is, but maybe you eliminate some of the categories so you don't get a PDD for landscaping, you don't get a PDD for articulations, you don't get a PDD for general outdoor storage, and so you narrow the standards.
But again, I'll go back, right? So let me go with the example. Developer walks in on this piece of property, he says, for my project to work, given what I'm paying the property owner for that land, I need to put a 5,000 square foot office building. The way for me to do that is to decrease the landscape buffer, because the tenants I'm going to go after are going to want a certain amount of parking, so I can't reduce the parking. And are y'all really going to let me decrease the stormwater runoff and flood the guy downstream? Well, no, probably not. So the only way to do it is to decrease the landscape buffer. I mean, that's a fairly common thing, right? And I have no reason to doubt the guy, whether that's accurate or not. I have no idea whether his project makes or not. He's telling me it only makes if he does that. And so that's, again, this question. And so staff is perfectly fine, and I mean this, if council's direction is, look, don't pound these folks so much, write up the PD and run it up the flagpole. And we'll tell you if we're okay with it or not. I think P&Z is going to say, well, how are we supposed to know what to recommend? Right? I mean, that's a little bit of the challenge with it is how do we know? Because the answer may be to the guy, look, you need to do the landscape buffer, you need to do a 4,500 square foot building then. And if you can't do that because you're paying too much for the land, you need to go back to the property owner and say, look, your land isn't big enough to be viable. I can't pay you this, I need to pay you that for it, right? There's not a right or wrong answer, because right, there's a drawback, means we don't get a project that may be a good project otherwise. That's where this stuff is hard, right? And so again, if we look at the developer who came in Northcliffe with the infill piece and all of the things he requested different, that's the same argument he made to us. Let me tell you why I need to get these things for this project to work, right? But we heard some on council say, but I'm not comfortable with that, doing the PDD, and we seem to be reducing standards, right? There's not a right or wrong answer to this. What I think staff is looking for is clarity, and what we need y'all to understand is that, not to be jaded, but it is a little bit give an inch, take a mile, right? And if we want to look at it on a case-by-case basis, that's certainly fine. Then staff needs to understand the message is, look, we want to make sure that we are having projects come in.
But see, to me, this is no different than a zoning issue. Okay, so if somebody comes in and says, I'm looking to buy this property, it's currently zoned residential, but I want to rezone it commercial because that's where I can make the most money. Okay, good to know. However, comma, our plan says this is going to be residential or it's going to be commercial. We don't want to put residential there. To me, there's no difference. In the case that you referenced in Northcliffe, you know, for whatever, it's the same thing. Whatever deal that they want to make for that land, you know, from my personal thing is they're coming in there with too dense of an option. You know, again, had they come in and said, well, everything around it's R6, I want to build R6, and if they would have come back and said, I got to change a gate or I got to change a road, I mean, okay, but it's suitable for that area. To me, it's based on the property and what their plan and vision is, what the plan and vision is for the city.
And so I don't disagree with that. And so let me go back where I talked earlier. It really is how we approach this rezone. So on the one hand, right, if you've got R6 all the way around and they come in to ask for R6, right, unless we're missing something, that seems to be fairly reasonable, right?
Right.
Right. And so we would agree. And so this one position to take is, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You need to ask for R6, and we're generally good with it, right? And it's that philosophy of, does this project make the community better or not?
But again, my point is, like, in case in point, the case up at the old golf course, they could have come in there and said, I want to put in 4 three-story apartment buildings, multifamily, on that lot. And that lot could have turned around and met all of the UDC standards for landscaping, setback, parking. They could have come back and said, I want to increase my landscaping, I want to increase my screening and fencing, I want to increase the amount of screens, and I want to increase the amount of parking. Me personally, I would have said, that's not the spot to put 3 or 4 three-story apartment buildings surrounded by single-family residential in its current setting. I mean, so they could have come back in with a PDD where they were asking for nothing that was a deviation from the standards, and they could have come in with 7 or 8 areas where they're doing nothing but increasing the standards. And me personally, I would have said no.
And so let me go back. It's this, where we talked, right? So you have this fundamental initial look is what they're asking for at all appropriate or not? And if the answer is it's not, sticking multifamily there is not appropriate, it doesn't matter whether you go straight zoning or how much you dress it up with a PDD to add, it's fundamentally not appropriate, right? And so really what you're talking about is, here's this thing that it could be appropriate, but there are a few negative consequences, and so I can mitigate those through a PDD, right? That would be the alternative. But if it's fundamentally the land use isn't appropriate, it's not appropriate, and the answer should be no, right? And then the hard thing is, if they came in with R6, and generally if our view was, well, you got R6 around it, that seems perfectly fine, and they said, but I want to increase the lot coverage by 10%. They're going to tell us all the reasons why that has to happen. And there's no way for us to know whether they're going, oh, look, we can live with it the way it is, but just let's try to get the increased lot coverage, right? I mean, that's, because we have people tell us, oh, this thing won't work, and when we push and push and push, then somehow it works. Now, we also can have some that walk away. So I think that's the challenge. So again.
Well, again, for me, I mean, I have faith in the staff. And like I said, I look at each parcel is potentially unique. But if you're saying if it's causing this much angst to the staff to try to figure this out, then to me, then the only solution is just go with straight zoning.
Yeah.
And say you buy a piece of property and you can, if it's zoned the way you want it, then you can build within that zoning, case solved. Or if you want to zone it to something else, you can go through the zoning process, knowing that you're going to go through the zoning process and whatever you're going to propose is going to meet the UDC 100%.
Yeah. And let me say this, I don't know that it's as much, and you may not have meant it this way, or you may have been it. I don't know it's as much angst to staff, but it's the conflict and it's the disruption we get on some of these cases going forward. So let me take the apartment case off Denot Hill. If the view of council was that zoning may be appropriate, but I can mitigate a few of the negative consequences through a PDD, right? We can eliminate the use of that road coming off 35. We can cap the number of units. We can increase the buffer and the setbacks from those properties. And that would have gotten the project through. That seems to have been a more positive outcome than where we are today, which is there's not really a clear idea of what would be appropriate going forward, right? That, I think, is the answer. And it's not helpful when a developer runs these things in saying, yeah, I think I'm in good shape on this deal, and they sort of hit this brick wall and they get denied and they're walking out going, what happened, staff, right? It's also not helpful when the residents don't sort of know what to expect in terms of the standard and how we view it, right? Again, I'll go back to the Northcliffe question in terms of what's appropriate for that property, right? If we have some clarity and vision of how we look at things, and not every single time, but it's that 90% of the time, right? We're saying, yeah, generally we're all on the same page with where we're headed, and occasionally we're not, and that's okay, that's gonna happen. I think that's what staff is after. And again, it's the, I'm gonna be blunt too, it's the split votes on council that were one off from one way or the other. Now, maybe that's just the way it is at the end of the day, but if we can figure out a way to sort of find something that works better for us, right? That sort of meets more needs, expands the pie, and get a better decision, that seems to be a better solution. And it won't always, because sometimes we just have these fundamental differences of view.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward.
So it seems like we're still kind of going around in a circle, because it depends, straight zoning, we haven't come to a consensus the way I'm hearing it. And it's like trying to figure out really, I guess, what staff is wanting for us, because some of us are saying it depends on the property, it depends if we're getting something out of it. I don't know how well that's helping you in making a decision, because I go back to the meeting we had with the apartments and the issues we had. It passed before, then it didn't, with the gas station and what we did.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of sent probably staff in a spiral going, what the heck? This is, so I'm just trying to
Yeah,
figure
so
out
let me-
how we can be
Yeah.
clearer, or give us direction on how we can be clearer to say, it depends on if they're giving us something better, then we do a PDD. If they're not, it's like, this is the requirements, this is our standard, you either meet it or move on down the road. And if we're okay with that, then that's the direction we need to give you.
So let me say this. I think if Councilman Davis's point was, look, I don't want staff to be so overly rigid that it's no to everything on a PDD. We get that, right? We get that. And we can work within that, and I think we certainly have. I think there's this fundamental how you look at these rezoning requests or SUPs, right? And so let me take the SUP for the gas station convenience store that sort of had a mixed vote change between. It seemed to be a tough one for most people, right? One way to look at that is, what's the reason to grant this SUP for something that's a more intensive use, that likely is going to have longer hours, that's likely going to have more traffic, that likely is going to have the issue of people filling up cars with gas and things that sort of comes with that, that likely is going to have lights on later at night, that even though you don't spill over, when you sit out in your backyard, you're going to be looking up at lights longer, right? And then the flip is that while you would say, well, there's a need for a gas station down in that area, which I think there is, just because there's a gas station 5 miles away, I don't think that's viable. But you could certainly say, why would we not rather have that gas station down at Lower Seguin Road in 1518? That seems a better location, that seems more viable, and you clearly have multiple corners where that could grow, and that the less intensive retail would buffer. So yeah, we do want a gas station in that general area, but that's not really the spot for it. because likely what we would get from the current zoning is more compatible with that residential use. And the flip side I'll give is, you know, restaurant and drive-through, last thing you want to probably live next to is a Burger King, which is one of the smellier kind of use it. But if you're next to a Starbucks, that's not so bad. They tend to close early, they open early, but we don't. That's that fundamental underlying philosophy of why would we grant an SUP there, as opposed to say we're willing to tell them no because there are negative consequences and there's another viable location. Now, the flip side is, well, how long are we going to wait till a gas station comes here, right? I mean, they're reasonable. That, to me, is the thing that sort of needs to get settled. It's the Northcliffe piece of, look, you bought this piece of land that's part of a golf course that's gone out of business, that everything is developed around it. So the bar on the redevelopment is frankly going to be a little bit higher. And yet, you really need to come in with R6 and probably not something denser than that. And you just kind of need to know that. Whereas we would say, yeah, up on 35, we're not going to put single family residential up on 35, so that's going to be commercial of the right. But if you're coming into the Northcliffe area, that needs to be single family detached, right? I mean, to me, if you start with that, right, then that helps you to frame this up, and that helps you then about how a PDD would work, right? Here's something that generally is maybe appropriate, but I can make it better. It's a valid use of a PDD. Here's some really unique factor with that property that causes us not to fit, and it's a good project all the way around, and they've done some other things that we've locked in, and that's a way to trade off. That's sort of a reason to do it. And is that?
Councilmember Brown?
Yeah.
No comment? Okay. Mr. Williams, you had a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say real fast, I think everything that Ryan just articulated would fit me, you know, pretty well. And I don't know if, I would think it would fit most of the other council members pretty well. Would anybody disagree with that?
I think what Brian said fits.
No, this council has a full confidence of the staff to make decisions.
Yeah,
But some of
I
our-
think we have a couple of things too. Okay. And I want to maybe draw the distinction between, say, a rezone or an SUP and development standards, right? We need direction in both, in essence, right? Do we have the ability to say no? I don't know how else to say it, but is the council okay with us saying no unless there is some compelling reason to bring something forward? Not necessarily say no, but
or say yes.
You know, generally speaking,
that we're not going to support this.
We
right?
are not going to support something that is not at the standard.
And that does not make the community generally better.
And it does not make the community generally better, or there's some sort of win-win scenario for some sort of exception, right? Dealing with the development standards. When it comes to a rezone, I think that's a little bit different, or a special use permit, a little bit different scenario, but we need similar direction. We need to understand the tone of the council. And
I think it's about the presentation. It's always about the presentation to me. If you address their concerns, traffic. For the Denot one, it was that road. If it was specific in regards to what it's going to look like, or is it part of it? It was just really confusing that wasn't addressed. If they can come in and you have the pictures that look great, everybody can decide, especially 15, 18, if they have all three of them, I think that would, solve everything.
Yeah, so
And then for the emotional residents, and because it's very emotional, and then you don't want to go, against the residents, obviously never to do that, but if you give them something to look at, they're going to appreciate it more and say, okay, well, let's go again.
Yeah, so I think the Denot Hill zoning case is one that staff would say, you could use a PDD to deal with some of the potential negatives on that and get everybody there. Because what I didn't hear really is anybody on council saying, I'm just fundamentally opposed to any multifamily on that. I didn't hear that really. Now, maybe they was thinking it, but fundamentally, what I heard were there are aspects to that that are problematic here, right? Whereas, let me go back. The first case we had on Cibolo Farms, right, off Savannah, that was one that their first request, it was for a multifamily thing. And I'm not sure how much you can do to mitigate those things, because at the end of the day, no matter what you did, the residents would say, I would rather have the current R2 there. There's no reason that's not viable. And you can't tell me that that doesn't increase traffic, you know, that would be less traffic than the rezone on Savannah. They're right. Right? I mean, they're right. I may not agree with them on the school overcrowding, because you can look at what's going up at Pascal and they've lost population. But it's a valid point on the traffic. It's a valid point. Why would you want to do something denser than our development? It's how we approach it. And that would seem to be one of those. So, I mean, again, the hard part of this, and I'm going to say this again, and I'll try to quit talking, it's telling somebody, yeah, good project, but wrong location doesn't fit here. And fundamentally, that's the case. We can't improve those things with the PDD. And that, yeah, if there's something really unusual with the property, we'll look at a PDD. We get that on those percentage, but not everybody walks in the door. But PDDs should make things better, and rezonings should generally make the community better, or if nothing else, be neutral, right? And so if you got 40, 50 residents up here opposed to it, it's probably saying it's not really making the community neutral or better.
Councilmember Brown.
You wrapped it up pretty good there. Councilman Davis said there, he trusts the staff. We've got to trust the staff to make those calls, to initiate those calls. And of course, if the customer, persists, they can always go up, can't they?
Yeah, let me be clear. We always tell them, look, if you want,
You wanna
tell us
spend
what
the
you
money.
want to put, and we'll run it up the flagpole. We're not going to recommend approval of it.
Right.
But where they get hung up is they don't want to do that. They want staff on board, and that's the round and round. But yeah, if they ever tell us, yeah, great staff, thanks, but I just want to go, we'll send it.
Yeah.
Get it on
okay.
the next agenda.
All right. That, and again, us collectively, keeping standards, going with the higher standard and maintaining it there versus the 19-foot, standard
Yeah.
on a 20-foot rule.
Yeah, that's the hard one, because on its surface, you're like, geez, it's just going from 20 to 19.6. Until you run through that, you're like, okay, now we're doing 7 feet.
Well, with that, Councilmember Haywood, do you have final thoughts, or did you forget to turn off your button?
I was going to have final thoughts, but I'll pass.
No, and I think this council agrees. We do have the confidence in staff to recommend or deny. And it will be up to the applicant whether or not they want to come all the way to council. And I'm sure that if this council decides, even after you recommend a denial, that this council decides it's okay and approve. We've done that before. And it's not to say that, your input was not considered. It's just a matter of opinion on the project itself.
All understood. Again, doesn't hurt staff's feelings.
Yeah.
And as I said, when we sit down and you vote, we're going to try to make that successful either way. What reason we kind of came this way is we see the tumult that occurs, right? That at times we think, is there a way to get there? Sometimes there's not.
Yeah, well, number one, having 40 or 50 people out there changes a lot. And I always try to watch planning and zoning, before we get here, so I get a better feel for how they came across. And sometimes it may come up here as a recommended approval, and there was a lot of questions, or vice versa. Yeah.
I also think when there's issues and people are having issues, because we're now saying we have faith in staff, if we want to ask the question, we can ask the question, but we shouldn't be saying, well, staff, why did you? Let's just find out what was the reason, because we're going to have people, like we've had before, talk about that, and I think if we're trusting the staff, we have to trust that you've given them the right information, and we just gotta
Yeah, but
kind
let
of
me
go.
say this, staff is perfectly fine with you saying, staff, why did you do this? That is not an issue whatsoever. We have no problem with that, right? Where we run into a disconnect is too many times where staff is recommending approval of stuff and it's getting denied 6-0, right? Then we start to say, how are we on a different page than council?
I think you guys being proactive and looking for places where things that cause a little bit of angst and identifying those and being proactive, I think that helps us get where we need to be and where the staff needs to be. But we have full faith in the staff to do their job, and we're okay with you telling people no. I am anyway.
All right. Thanks. Thank you. It's clear as mud. Yeah. All right. We do have two closed sessions. Item number 17, the City Council will meet in closed session under Section 551.087 of the Texas Governmental Code, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations. Closed meeting. The governmental body is not required to conduct an open meeting, one, to discuss or deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or number two, to deliberate the offer of financial or other incentives to a business prospect. This is in reference to Project E-80, Project E-83, and Project E-84. And also on the closed session is item number 18. The City Council will meet in closed session under Section 551.074 of the Texas Governmental Code, Personal Matters, to conduct an annual evaluation of the City Secretary, Ms. Sheila Edmonds. And the time is now 9:22. We will reconvene after our discussion. The time is now 9:47. We reconvene into a regular session after our discussion and deliberation regarding our closed session. Item number 19, reference item number 17, EDC projects. Start time was 9:27, end time was 9:41, and we do have a resolution presented for council. Resolution number 24R-132, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the expenditures as reflected in the amendment to the Economic Development Performance Agreement between the City of Schertz, Texas Economic Development Corporation and 3009 OAC Investments, LLC, and Schertz Freckles, LLC, and other matters in connection therewith. Council, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Macaluso and second by Councilmember Brown. Any other discussion? Council, if you can please cast your vote. We can publish the vote, please. We have 6 ayes, no objections. Motion passes. Item number 20 on the closed session. Reference item number 18, the city secretary evaluation. Start time was 9:44, end time was 9:46. The council has provided the mayor with some guidance regarding the subject matter. There is no action required at this time. Item number 21, monthly updates. Major projects in progress. Information packets were provided to council and available for public viewing at our website, schertz.com. So we'll move on. Requests and announcements. Council, any possible updates or information requested from staff? Seeing none. Council, any possible items you'd like to place on the future agenda? Seeing none. Announcements by council. Mayor Pro Tem Westbrook?
None.
Okay. Councilmember Davis?
Yes, sir. I had the pleasure of attending National Night Out with the city staff and then the TML conference in Houston. Thank you.
Councilmember Watson?
National Night Out and then TML, and that was all.
Councilmember Macaluso?
Okay, did the National Night Out, the TML conference, and also participated with the YMCA Trunk or Treat, which they said they had a record number of attendees this year.
Councilmember Hayward?
Yes, I attended National Night Out, and I forgot to bring it, but the neighborhood Riata made a poster for City Council and the first responders to thank us for coming out for National Night Out. So I'll bring it to the next council meeting so everybody can see it. I attended the Animal Advisory Committee, and then the TML Annual Conference, where I became TML President, which is going to be a duty on top of the duty as a city council member. So I will probably be busy, but I will be representing the city of Schertz very well and the state of Texas. And then I did the Judge the Fire Prevention Poster Contest and the Chamber Civic Leaders Luncheon.
Councilmember Brown?
I'm nowhere near as engaged as Queen Allison, but National Night Out, the Civic Leaders Luncheon, voted on the fire posters today.
All right. The time is now 9:50. We stand adjourned.